And we're back. On our upper left, we have Jay Dyer, and on our right, well, actually, we're going to switch positions because of their positions. So we'll do this in reverse. Ryan Dawson, go ahead, shout yourself out, tell everybody where they can find you.
Just my website, ancreport.com. I'm basically banned on everything. Oh, I have Cozy too. I just joined them this week. Cozy TV/Dawson.
Awesome. Okay. And then Jay Dyer, same to you. Shout yourself out, your channel out to everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, my channel is just Jay Dyer on YouTube, and then I'm on Rockfin as well as Jay Dyer, and then my website's Jay's Analysis, and then most of the other social media stuff.
All right. We appreciate that. Tonight's debate topic is theism versus anti-theism. I'm going to let Ryan open, and the reason I am is because he had a couple of qualifiers he wanted to go over as he was doing the debate, and he wanted to kind of briefly touch on those. And then we'll move it right over to Jay for his opening. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I'm also on Rockfin, but they froze my ability to cash out crypto, so I don't really post there anymore. But yeah, I don't like the framing of theism versus anti-theism. I'm not against theology at all. I still go to church once a week, and my problem with religion is not the epistemological claims or metaphysics or moral axioms. I mean, it depends on who's interpreting it, I guess, but it's more with the political and financial aspects that are obviously part of the business aspect of churches and mosques that are affecting our daily lives. That's where I have an issue, especially with Zionism.
Okay, appreciate that. I guess, Jay, go ahead with your open. We'll see where it goes from there, I guess.
Well, I'm not knocking Ryan or you or anybody. I thought I came prepared for a philosophy debate. So, my arguments were going to be based around the types of worldviews that we see in theism and then variations of atheism or non-theism or naturalism, whatever they might be. And I think that, in my perspective, the reason I'm a Christian, Orthodox Christian, would be that I think that they have the best philosophical case for giving an account for ethics, for metaphysics, for epistemology. I think that the worldview as a whole provides an account for grounding the beliefs that we have in those three domains of philosophy, which in my view make up a worldview. So, for example, if we ask questions like, is the universe purposeful, or is it what we call in philosophy dysteleological? Does it have an overriding design or purpose, or is it purposeless? If we phrase it in a disjunctive like that of an either or, in my view, the accidentalist worldview or the dysteleological worldview leads us to a world where we're not able to predicate, we're not able to have meaningful statements, we're not able to make consistent and coherent arguments utilizing principles like logic and reasoning. If we consider typical atheist or naturalist arguments that oftentimes, I don't know about Ryan's position, but oftentimes they fall into determinism, they fall into these positions where we don't have an account for the possibility of freedom. We don't have an account for agency, free will, and thus moral responsibility. So that's sometimes called the naturalist fallacy or the determinist fallacy. That's a typical critique that I would make of atheistic materialistic positions. I don't know exactly what Ryan's position is in that regard, but I would say that we could put another disjunctive out there, like is the ultimate principle in the universe personal or impersonal? And so in these disjunctives, either way we go in these questions will determine a lot of what we believe in the rest of our worldview. So if there's a personal God behind the universe, then what we get is an account for teleology, an account for purpose, an account for these other things that I mentioned before that don't leave us with an empty sort of nihilistic or meaningless universe. I would say that a universe where I have a belief in a personal God does provide a way in which there's grounding for universal moral and ethical claims. So objective morality exists in a worldview where there is a deity, where there is a personal God, and thus the things that in philosophy we call preconditions or transcendental categories, such as belief in the external world, identity over time, the self, time-space relations, universals, laws of logic, causality, telos, the principle of the one and the many. These are classic sort of philosophical questions and problems. In my view, those things which are prior to the possibility of knowledge, preconditions or transcendental categories, those things themselves, if we think about them as in a kind of a list or in a ball, they make sense in a worldview, in a paradigm where you have creation, providence, a personal God. They don't make sense in a world where there is no telos. It's purely dysteleological. Everything is determined. There's a pure chaos, chance, randomness is the overriding factor. We wouldn't have a basis or a grounding for those preconditions. So I always make the argument that the strongest place that I see for the existence of God is the transcendental argument in regard to these transcendental categories, which are not themselves reducible to or identical to any physical thing. So the self, causality, telos, particularity versus universality, this consciousness, immaterial concepts, universals, laws of logic, mathematical objects, etc. None of these things are reducible to physicality, physicalism, or matter itself. And so in a universe where there are immaterial realities, where we do have a way to unify these transcendental categories, we have a being that does that in the Christian worldview, particularly the Orthodox view of Christianity. And all I would say that the history of philosophy itself, as we go through the Enlightenment up to today, we see a debate between various schools of rationalism and empiricism, and these debates that center around a worldview where there is no God, where we have autonomous reasoning without divine revelation. And when we do that, what we do is we put ourselves as human beings in a position where we can't actually do the thing we're trying to do. We see this, for example, with Descartes' project of trying to identify some self-evident principle, which he basically says is his mind, but it becomes a self-referential exercise of, again, predicating about things that he thinks are self-evident, which aren't actually self-evident. If we go the route of the skeptics and the empiricists like David Hume, we have the same problem of trying to find foundational principles that are self-evident in the world, such as basic bitch empiricism, naive empiricism, which themselves are not justifiable. How do we know that all knowledge comes through sense data? Right, that would be a proposition that is not itself found in sense data, but has to be assumed from the outset. So the debate, in my view, whether we're atheists of the stripe of David Hume, skeptics of that school, or if we're somebody like Sam Harris, or for somebody like Richard Dawkins, all of those kinds of positions or versions of atheism would be susceptible to the kind of critique that I'm trying to give here, which would apply basically to any version of naturalism. Or even just skepticism. So my argument then is that these transcendental categories, which are necessary as preconditions for the possibility of any knowledge at all, or any metaphysics at all, or any ethics at all, themselves are not reducible to physical things or physicalism. They must be the case. And the only way to make sense of all of those things, working together, interrelating with one another, would be in a paradigm where there is the kind of God that we argue for. Why would that be the case? Well, in the Christian paradigm, man is made in the image of God, so he has the reasoning powers and faculties like God. There is a masculine determination where masculinity has a primacy, and especially Orthodoxy has retained that. So we find that you will never find an overturning of the notion of goddess worship or something like that. So it's a specific type of theism. It's not a bare Unitarian theism like we find in Judaism or Islam, because there's an eternal relationship between the three persons, which provides a basis for there being energies and attributes not contingent upon the created order. So God is both outside of time and space, but also within time and space. So in other words, it's a unique position. And because of attributes like divine providence, we have a basis for belief in the regularity of nature, in the notion, which underlies basically the possibility of induction and science itself. You couldn't have science without some principle of induction and regularity. Divine providence makes sure that the future is like the past, and so we have a solution to, like, David Hume's dilemmas of how do we know the future will be like the past, these kinds of radical skeptical questions. We have a basis for metaphysical principles in the distinction between the creator and the creature, that principles retain and stay the way that they are, that being retains its status. The good is the good and will always be the good. Evil is always negation of the good. All of those things maintain those identities and those definitions because of the structure that we have in Christian metaphysics. And lastly, Christianity provides a justification for how there is objective morals. It doesn't mean that Christians are always moral. It doesn't mean that Christian morality answers every single ethical question ever or possible, but it does provide a basis for how there's objective morals, given the fact that there is an omnipotent deity who is omnibenevolent, et cetera, et cetera. So my argument would just simply be that worldview, that paradigm gives an account for, makes sense of, and can justify the possibility of knowledge. And I don't think that any atheist positions can actually do that. And in fact, they actually undercut the possibility of knowledge whatsoever.
Thanks for the opening, Jay. The floor is open, guys, if you want to go from there.
What do you mean, guys? Just me, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the floor is open for both of you for back and forth. Yeah.
Well, he said a lot, so I need to address a bunch of things. I think it's a non sequitur with Kant's transcendental arguments that, like, logic and ethics and things can't exist because they're not physical in the sense of like baryonic matter. The concepts are in the mind, the brain. I don't know. I think the mind is the brain or whatever, but it doesn't matter to me. Like, obviously, people practiced logic and ethics and had moral axioms and stuff before Christianity was invented. And I don't see the jump from the argument for deism to the very specific religion tied to religious texts like the Bible of whatever form of Christianity, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, what have you, which is definitely a very important part of the faith, which is so different than, well, I don't think we can have reasoning unless some all-powerful thing creates it. There is a problem with determinism. And of course, the determinists, if he wanted to split hairs on things, could just say, well, whatever they think was also determined. It's just, I don't see any benefit to that. And I don't see any difference in outcome, whether or not, I don't think it matters whether someone believes in this deity or not, because they're still going to practice logic and have ethics.
Well, the first thing I would say is, you said it's a non sequitur in regard to like Kant's arguments, and I would agree with that because I wasn't making Kant's argument. I mean, Kant has a kind of a transcendental argument, but he doesn't think that you can prove God's existence or know really any kind of clear proof. He's more of a fideist. So the transcendental argument that I was giving has the same form as Kant's argument, but it's not Kant's argument for God. So it's a distinct argument for an entire paradigm, which Kant would never do, because Kant doesn't think you can actually know what's going on outside of, the phenomena as they present themselves. And he certainly doesn't think that you can really know what's going on in other people's minds. So Kant wouldn't make a metaphysical argument for Christianity or the kind of God that I was arguing for. Second, I would say, people doing logic and ethics prior to the emergence of Christianity really doesn't have anything to do with whether the doing of the ethics and logic makes sense or can be justified. So questions of justification are separate from the benefit or the non-benefit that they offer.
I agree. But
right.
Like, why, if the result's the same, why does it matter is what I'm saying.
Well, because justification for our beliefs is a very precise type of question, and it's asking for reasons why we think that is the case, reasons why we think logic works. So it's kind of a meta-logical question or a meta-ethical question. So to just say that people did it or it worked for them doesn't answer the question that justification is after.
I don't see the justification either. I'm not saying you're just like Kant, but he did have his synthetic knowledge for his response to Hume's associationism, and he's also reacting to idealism and relativism with his categorical imperatives and things. But I see the difference there. But for me, I don't see why it's necessary to have this God character creating like the laws of physics or what have you. Why can't those just be part of nature and a portion of which we discover, and we base our logic on that from pattern recognition and trying to figure out nature in the world through our senses and through contemplation, thinking, reasoning, all those together. It's not limited to just, the five senses or something. Obviously we combine those. And I'm not going to act like I know how the mind works and get into microtubules and what consciousness is or whatever, but it seems clear to me that we have it. And if we don't, and it's deterministic, then how would I know? Because that still would be determined whether I knew it or not. So for me, it's I'm kind of being consequentialist here, I guess, but I don't see the need or why it makes a difference when you have the same results. And I also don't get the jump from the rationalization of a deist deity that, okay, like a Spinozan, okay, this thing creates all the laws of nature and man can discover a portion of them, fine. Or they're already there and man can discover a portion of them. The God character doesn't add anything.
So, for example, the first thing that you said in terms of pattern recognition, the questions that we're asking, there's a couple different types of questions that I'm asking. One would be when we say that there's a recognition of patterns in the history of philosophy, you get questions like the question of universals or essences. So when we ask that there's a pattern, we're saying, okay, what is it that we're saying that is similar between these objects, but also in a way distinct, right? So there's got to be qualities or traits or things that we can pick out that allows for there to be patterns at all. So to say that, well, we just do this doesn't give an account for how we do it and why we should do it and why is it or how is it possible to even do this? So
you're going to have induction, right? Like even when you're saying an object, like the lines are arbitrary.
Right.
So you're going to, no matter what it is, like if you're doing scientific classifications, we say, all mammals have hair and reptiles lay eggs or whatever. Like those are true in the sense that they, conform with observation, but where all we drew these lines and categories and stuff is completely made up because it's useful.
So again, I'm asking a question about the principle of induction itself or the principle of deduction, which goes along with that. So how do we know that those things are the case and what are those principles themselves? When we ask those kinds of questions, to say that, well, they just work doesn't answer the question that's being asked. So we're asking for something specific in terms of epistemology, which is called justification. Are we justified in believing in the principle of induction? Not all philosophers, for example, Hume didn't think we were justified.
Right.
We don't have a justification for that. So we
don't know either. I mean, our knowledge, I would say the difference between knowing and thinking is the degree of confidence. And if it seems to work over and over again, then we put a certain degree of confidence and claim we know something. But as you know from Thomas Kuhn and others, that sometimes we hit a paradigm and there's a shift of everything we thought we knew.
Right. So how do we know
that is what we're doing?
Right.
We don't know.
That's why the transcendental argument is geared towards answering the paradigm question. So there's no way to solve these problems without comparing the what's that?
So that's the danger there. I'm comfortable with saying we don't know and we can have paradigm shifts. I think when we think we do know is where we run into dogmatism, and that I don't think it's objective. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of different religions and a whole bunch of different sects within the same religion and a whole bunch of different interpretations of the same text within the same sect within the same religion. So it's still subjective.
Yeah, but
I'd like to be an objective reality, an objective morality, though. I wish that was the case, and I think you can have it within value sets with the stated goal. And then you go back to
well, wouldn't that be a non sequitur? The fact that people disagree on an interpretation of a text or the claims, that doesn't prove that nobody knows or that there's not objective truth. That's a non sequitur.
No, it doesn't. But if you don't have access to it, what's the difference? I mean, you're still left with everybody arguing over their interpretation. Like if there is a God, we don't have access to what it wants us to do or anything. We have a bunch of religious texts and a bunch of different interpretations.
Well, how do you know that the religious texts don't convey that?
Because they're ridiculous.
Well, so on the basis of what? Logic and reasoning?
Yeah, and I don't think logic and reasoning are tied to having to have a God make them. Logic and reasoning are based on pattern recognition.
So what are logic and reasoning? What is logic and what is the principle of reason that man has? What is that?
Well, I just give a specific example. I don't think somebody lived in a whale's belly for 3 days. It's just not possible. We can look at whales and people and how they have to breathe. And I mean, you know that what this is. Logic is coming, like even mathematics, whatever we do, math is objective once we set the parameters, but that's still arbitrary.
So humans determine the parameters and the objectivity of mathematics.
Humans determine there wouldn't be math or morals or any of that without people.
So are they social constructs or are they discoveries?
Yeah, I don't know if math is discovered or just a very useful tool. It seems to be
What about
discovered.
logic?
It seems to be something that matches our reality.
What
But then
about
it
logic?
depends. Logic too seems to, because we have confidence in it because it works.
Why should we follow things just because they work?
Because the alternative is following things that don't work.
Yeah, but maybe that's what we should do. So there's a normativity thing here.
You can follow things that don't work. But I think the people who survive are the ones following the things that work.
Right, but maybe we shouldn't survive. Maybe we're polluting the planet and all the humans need to go away. I don't believe that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
that,
I mean, there are some liberals that do feel that way.
Right. So what I'm saying is that what's assumed here is a value judgment or some sort of normativity, and I'm asking for, well, how do you know that normativity question is what we ought to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's Hume's guillotine between ought and is, and I don't know. It's just these are, it's asking my belief. I have value sets. I have my own ethics, morals, and I base them on my own empathy, sympathy, and reason. And I don't need supernatural explanations to develop those for myself. And I'm okay if someone else does. And I'm okay if they think Allah or Jesus or whoever their figure is set out rules and they have the perfect interpretation and these are objective. As long as they behave well, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, what does it mean to behave well?
Well, that would go back. Of course, I'm judging what I think is good behavior. I don't know how I could do otherwise.
Well, should we have good reasons for our ethics and our beliefs and why we accept this or that logical principle? Should we have a good reason or any reason?
Yeah, I think we should root it in reason, most things.
Okay.
But with more than ethics, we're making claims also about truth and other things. And I think the way we look at empiricism for science, I think empiricism is a pretty good tool for science. It has its limits, though. It's very different than like an historical truth or some, a memory or whether I feel pain or something like that. You'd prove those things all differently. But yeah, we root things in reason and objectivity as much as possible. But there are definitely ethical questions that are not as simply like math. It's going to be subjective. And we can argue within the subjectivity, and we do. But it'd be very hard to say, no, I'm objectively right on all ethical questions is going to be difficult. And even if you say, well, I'm right because I'm speaking on behalf of God and he's always right and infallible. I'm like, but how do I know you're speaking on behalf of God or the right God or if God even is there? Like, it's still subjective. And I don't have a problem with, okay, it's subjective. And we're going to have to argue between our own subjective opinions. That what else? There's no other way out of that.
Do you think all moral claims are purely subjective?
Well, like I said, I should give an example. I said when we make a value set, for example, like this isn't absolute, but nearly everyone would say health is better than sickness, right? So let's say our values, we'd like to live a long time rather than a short time, and we'd like to be healthy. And don't beg the question. You know what sick is, you know what healthy is. Okay, if our goal is health, then our actions have to conform to that which works in prolonging health. And what works is probably going to be based on empiricism. That's how we figure out what works. So when someone gets sick, I'm going to go with the best empirical knowledge of the day to try and fix it rather than say prayer or something. And if there's some tribe out there that's like, okay, let's say a baby's born, they have that little piece of the umbilical cord still on their belly button. Aesthetically, it's ugly. I'm going to get rid of it. That's not actually healthy, as we know, but they might yank it off anyway. And the result will be some portion of those babies will get poisoned and die. Well, then within their own framework, since they also are aiming at health and so are we, they are objectively wrong because their actions did not lead to their own stated goal. However, what all values you pick are not objective. I mean, health seems to be one, most of us are going to pick. But, you know, as you go down the ladder, there's going to be major disagreements on values.
So in the things that you listed there, you seem to have a prior categorization of the things that are objective, the things that are subjective. And so there's like a prior delineation issue there. Is that also true, or is that also relative? Is that objectively true, the criteria that you gave, or is that relative?
The criteria, the priorness is just based on experimentation. Now you are going to have, well, do we have uniformity in, like, the laws don't change, right? So if you're going to say physical laws just change all the time, then you're going to have a problem. But experience is showing, at least in our local area and with baryonic matter and so on, that the laws are not changing. And so that's the first thing you have to accept. And if you accept that, then you say, okay, well, this is what happened last time. If the conditions are all the same, it'll happen again. And so you can base on experience, like, you know what, we shouldn't rip this off the baby's belly. It actually is harming them. And we know that because every time we did it, you know, it harmed them. You base it off experience, trial and error. You could do it through reasoning. You could do, there's different ways to get to the same conclusion, get the same result, but you're dealing with all your problems in an empirical way without the appeal to the superstition and stuff.
Well, right. So a couple things there. You had said earlier that you recognize the problem of getting a not from an is, but now you seem to be saying that from all of the empirical observations of this, you can derive what you ought to do from this instance.
I'll say it again. It's an ought. If you have, once you have your value set, like health, then what you ought to do is what actually prolongs health.
Well, how do you know you have the right value set?
That you don't. You have to. That's the thing. That's the subjective part. I said it's only objective within a value set once you've set your parameters. But I guess you could argue, like, if people didn't if you didn't value living and health and stuff, then you wouldn't be alive and it'd be self-contradictory.
Well, it's not an issue.
That has to be your value set.
No, it's not an issue of whether that's a good value, because the question is prior. It's that your first criteria is relative, and then you're saying this is the value set.
So what? I mean, yeah, the values are relative.
So
that's what people argue about.
You don't, in the subset, you don't achieve objectivity.
You do within your subset. That's what I agree. I mean, that's the problem.
Right. But I'm saying that's not a justified move if the original principle itself is relative.
Why not? You have relative values.
The overriding principle is relative, and we don't know if that's the right value set.
Right. We don't know. That's the thing.
So it's not a justified belief. So it wouldn't be a justified.
Sure, it is. If it works, it's based on pragmatism.
Why should
this baby live? This one didn't.
But that begs the question.
Because you want your kids to live, and basing it on empiricism has that kind of result.
Criteria. So you're switching back and forth between the subset and the first criteria. The first criteria is relative, and then everything under that you're saying is objective. And I'm saying,
yes.
but I'm saying that is an invalid move because we don't know that the first criteria, which determines the second, is correct.
We don't have to. I mean, that's the thing. It's guesswork. Arbitrary. You set up a value. Yes, it is arbitrary. I said that in the very beginning. All of our science, even our math, is arbitrary. Like, it's useful tools that seem to work very well for our stated goals. Well, the goals you pick are up to you. That
wouldn't make it arbitrary, because if it works in the world, it can't be arbitrary. If it's arbitrary, I can change it at will.
Well, it works in the world is the value is arbitrary. I could not choose health, you know. That value is arbitrary. As far as what works, it seems like it's going to have to match what's actual, or it isn't going to work. Although not all the time. Yeah, sometimes you can have the completely wrong correlation that happens to work, and it's not true at all. That also can happen.
But what if that happens in the case of your subset?
Then you'd just be wrong.
So then the subset wouldn't be objective.
Well, people get things wrong all the time. I mean, I'm talking about how things actually are.
Okay, but if it's objective, it can't be wrong.
If it's objective, it can't be wrong, and it wouldn't be if you got the right formula and it's matching everything.
Right, but that's the question we're asking, is how we know that we have in that subset the right set of values.
No. If you're doing it purely on pragmatism, then you could have something like, I don't know, geocentric navigation seems to work even though it's wrong. Newtonian gravity seems to work as long as we're on the Earth, even though it's wrong. Right, but I'm okay with that. I'm like, okay, that it was close enough that it works.
But the thing with pragmatism is that we kind of have assumed in the first proposition where we want to go. So the fact that appealing to pragmatism doesn't actually tell us if it works, because it only works based on the value set that we've already chosen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know we've chosen the right value set, which is what determines how it works?
You don't know. You just
Right.
base it on your reasoning of,
So
you know,
your
whatever
ethic would-
values you're going to pick based on your goals. Those might be biologically driven. Like most
you are
species
saying-
want to live versus not.
So there's
Yeah.
not a justification for ethics, is what I'm getting at, in your view.
Sure, there is. You want ethics because, like, you don't
If
want
they're arbitrary, then there's not a
I don't think being arbitrary disqualifies something from being useful or valid. I mean,
Well,
these are
but
the ones we pick and we do it. Like, what music do I like? It's
But it
totally
doesn't-
subjective. I
okay.
still like it. I don't need to defend that with these mathematical notes and stuff are objectively better than this other band or whatever. It's not like that's not what we really do.
Well, give it a second. Let Jay respond. Go ahead, Jay.
Right. So, but that's precisely the point, though, is that the question that was asked in terms of justification is about having good reasons for the belief sets that we have, the values that we have, and them not just being any old thing. If we reduce our ethics to taste preferences, then there's no reason or basis to say that any actions are actually morally wrong. And that was really the question that I was asking was, what is the justification for your criteria for choosing the value sets? And you said they're arbitrary. In debate, to be arbitrary is a violation of the laws of debate.
They're still arbitrary, even if you have religious values, because that's just that sort of person's subjective interpretation of whatever religion they're
You're
following.
confusing the fact that a person has an interpretation with them being purely subjective, and that's not the same thing.
No, you're going to say this is my value set because I think Jesus said so or whatever.
No, I think that
Where
there's a
you
justification.
get rid of relativism is in the subset, and that's really all you can do. As far as picking the values, that's something that's based on the reason, their empathy, sympathy. I wouldn't want that to happen to me, whatever the little axiom is. And it could be religious or secular. I don't see any difference in outcome there.
If your criteria itself is relativistic, anything else under that subset is not going to achieve objectivity.
It's subjective questions. I mean, you can answer math with math and science with science. When you're talking about ethics, you're going to run into it's not physics. It has physics envy, you could say. Now, you could say, well, within this goal,
here
here's the things that match reality that work.
But we're talking about logical propositions as they relate to ethics.
Well, I don't think ethics works like that. I think ethics is subjective. I wish it wasn't.
Then there's not
I
objective.
mean, I strongly believe in I strongly am against certain things that maybe you think are objective. I mean, I assume you're not a literalist with the Bible, right?
Well, I think there's a literal sense to the text, and there's also a allegorical, mystical.
But you don't really, it's allegories and metaphors. You don't really think everything was made in 7 days, right?
No, I believe in 6-day creation.
Oh, okay. And all the miracles and stuff are real?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, then. So you take it literally.
Again, I take things that are meant to be literal.
So you believe in monarchy?
In what?
Divine rule and monarchy rather than republics and democracy. We should have a king and a queen.
I do.
You do believe in monarchy? Okay.
Yeah.
Slavery?
No, I don't believe in slavery. No.
Well, they practiced it for over 1,000 years.
Right, but the fact that something's practiced doesn't mean that it was intended to always be practiced.
Well, we're taking it literally. I mean, right after the 10 Commandments, you got Exodus 21:20 giving out the rules of how you can beat your slaves and punish them and own them as property.
I mean,
like that's definitely what they meant.
Right, but you just said ethics are the sets of ethics that we choose are relative. So I'm not clear why you think this is wrong.
Well, I'm asking you, are you okay with slavery? It's in the books.
Yeah, but the religion as a whole gives a context as to when these things are to be done away with and fulfilled. So the laws to the Israelites.
So it was okay, and now it's not.
So, no, there's a change in certain laws, which is part of the religion itself.
Sure. Okay. Are there any today? Like, does your church support circumcision?
No.
Oh, that's good. So Eastern Orthodox does not support circumcision. Then that's my favorite form of Christianity then, because I think that's just genital mutilation. And I'll give a religious argument for that too. If God designed the body and that's what that's the penis he made, you're trying to alter that by cutting a piece of it off.
But the point that I was getting at is that some things are in the law for a time period, and you laughed at that, but I'm not sure why that would be absurd or why that would seem strange.
Why was slavery okay for so long?
Well, Israelite slavery introduced certain stipulations where you couldn't abuse people, so it was actually novel in the ancient world.
They had indentured servants and slaves.
Correct. Right.
That's
Indentured servanthood, and indentured servanthood is something revolutionary in the ancient world.
Are you okay with indentured servitude?
I'm just saying that God spoke to that time to that people, and he introduced laws, for example, that you can't abuse them and mistreat them. But if you conquered a people group and you had their wives and their kids, then those laws are about how to take care of those people. That's revolutionary in the ancient world.
Yeah, I mean, it's ahead of its time for the time period, but God should be outside of culture and time. Get the correct answer right away.
Well, that's according to you, but why can't God wait?
Because he's supposed to be this all-knowing thing.
Right, but that's assuming that you know his designs, and why can't he introduce certain things pedagogically over time?
He can do whatever he wants, but I think slavery is a moral evil and was never okay and still isn't.
Well, I would like to know why you think it's immoral, and we need more than just your subjective preferences, because that doesn't achieve any kind of.
See, that's the thing. You don't accept. You won't accept it because
you don't.
I could say okay because Allah or Zeus said so. Whatever. Like now, God's behind me. It's the same reasoning and stuff I would say anyway, except I added a God creature. It's going to be the same. More like why slavery is wrong. You know why you can't own a person. Don't play dumb. Like that's wrong.
Well, again, you say I know it's wrong. But
would you like to be a slave?
So you're deflecting on.
You can't just use your imagination and say, "Gee, that would."
What
really
I want
suck.
to know is a justification for objective morals, which you said there aren't any. So
I don't think there's any problem with subjectively saying, like, if you want to argue with lots of people about who all think slavery is good versus not.
That's a fallacy. So that's appeal.
Not at all. No, what you say is objective. Isn't you think
don't know that
you literally believe every word of the Bible? Like
a lot of
people wrote that.
You understand that's a fallacy. What you just said.
No, it's not. It's divinely inspired, and I would say no, it isn't.
You don't think it's
hang on? You guys are talking. Hang on, stop. You guys are both talking over each other, and nobody can understand what's going on. Just back up. Go ahead.
There's a bit of lag between Japan and wherever.
To say that a lot of people agree that slavery is wrong is a fallacy. It's called the mass appeal fallacy. It has nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong.
That's not why it's right or wrong. It's just saying that it's such a simple question that even tons of people will derive the same answer.
And you keep, I know you keep saying that.
I don't
know why.
Sorry. I don't think you could maintain such a moral evil unless you thought that you had an objective prescription from a deity that told you to do things that were definitely horrible. Like, we agree circumcision's wrong, but we have tens of millions of Christians and Jews that mutilate their little boys. And I don't think because they hate their kids. I don't think they're like, I'm going to hurt my son. They just do it because they don't think at all.
Let me ask you this question. What do you think it means to ask for justification for a belief or a claim?
I think for you, it means that we have to have a unquestioning authority figure that says this is the way, therefore it's subjective.
No,
because
in
my
philosophy,
figure
what
says it is.
In philosophy, what is the question of justification after?
You get a whole bunch of different answers for that, but I don't care.
In the domain of epistemology, what are some of those?
You have utilitarianism, you have Kant's way, you have hedonism, you get a bunch of different things. For me, the justification is, as I said,
those aren't justification.
Pragmatism.
Those are not part of just epistemology. Those are utilitarian. That's ethics. So in terms of epistemology, what do you think the question of justification is after?
You want objectivity.
I mean,
which you don't have.
Well,
because if things, if it's subjective and matches reality, the actions we're taking, that to me seems like the one that's going to work the best. Although I guess there are some exceptions where you're completely off base and things still happen to work. But
So
usually, the
so
majority of the
justification is
time,
after the question of, is it true? Is it a belief that we ought to have?
well, we don't
Doesn't
know
matter.
what's true until, like, that's the thing we're trying to discover. We're trying to figure out what the
How do
natural
you,
order and
right,
laws
so
are through
we,
experimentation and
you're
science
saying
and
all of,
reasoning.
is that true for everybody?
Well, no, not everyone. Some people are schizophrenic or whatever, I
No, I mean,
suppose.
the statement, we don't know what's true, is that universally true in your view?
I don't know. That's what I believe, though. I mean, I don't think anybody was just born knowing the everything.
Okay, but the fact that you believe that is not an argument, right?
I mean, the fact that you don't believe that's not an argument. You just think someone just knew all the right things.
No, I'm specifically getting to the question of justification because you're making these claims that none of us knows these things. We don't know these things. And I'm just curious how you know that.
I don't know. That's just my belief. That's what I
So
said.
then there's not arguments behind the claims that you're making.
I don't care. I mean, that's just, you asked me what
Okay,
I
well,
believe.
but
That's what I believe.
But that's what a debate is presenting the arguments and justifying those arguments.
No, because like I feel like you
That's not
have
what a debate is.
a dogmatic attachment to your faith that isn't going to budge and doesn't matter what I say. Like, I'm saying religions are subjective, and you're like, no, they're not. Well, all of them except for mine are. Like,
But I'm
all the
asking you-
religions are
yeah.
subjective except for my religion. Mine's the real one, and it's true, and my God's
Yeah,
correct.
but
All these other
giving
gods are made
arguments.
up.
Yeah, but I'm giving an argument and demonstrating how that's the case.
It isn't, though, because there's no bridge between God is the necessary condition in order for there to be things like ideas and concepts and reasoning and logic. I think
Okay.
all those things exist independent of God.
Okay.
And are derived through experience by people messing with nature. I mean, that's how we come up with our rules.
And then my question has been the justification for that claim.
And then Jay,
I'm
Jay,
asking the
can you move your mic?
justification for the
Can you move your
claim
mic
that
a little
God
bit closer? There you go.
That God is necessary for there to be physical laws. Like, why can't that just be part of matter?
Because I listed a whole bunch of things that are more than just physical things, and laws aren't reducible to physical objects.
That's a non sequitur for me too. Like, I'm not talking about like motion is not part of the thing. It's where it's the position of the thing that's still tied to the thing, though. Like,
so
whatever our logic is about stuff still depends on data from the stuff. And I don't think secondary, if you could go in like Locke and stuff, like colors and all that.
Reductionism. The fact that logic relates. By the way, you said a non sequitur.
I'm not. I think your idea of physicalism is just like atoms or something.
I don't know what your position on that is, but it sounds like physicalism.
No, like, I don't think. I mean, I'm not denying atoms. I think, like, I don't know. I mean, I know.
You said a non sequitur, right? So you appeal to
a
law.
To me, there's no bridge there. Like, oh, my memories are not physical, or my ideas of logic are not physical, or my concepts of I think therefore I am, whatever. Like, the mind isn't physical, although it might be. Like, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I think the mind could just be the brain, and the brain is definitely physical. And all those things technically actually are physical, but not in the same sense as like a table. Like, neuronic firing patterns are very different than, carbon atoms or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's getting into the weeds.
I'm asking different questions, though, that I don't think I'm just not being clear. Like, when you appeal to something being a non sequitur, you're appealing to a law of logic, right? The non sequitur.
Yep.
Okay. Do you think the laws of logic are universally applicable at all times in all places?
There ought to be. The problem is people are going to disagree on what they think the laws of logic are. Like, people make logical fallacies all the time without being aware of it.
Okay, but what does that have to do with whether the laws of logic are the case, and why should we?
Because the laws of logic are derived by experience with nature, not because some divine thing just maintains that, like, every time there's gravity, God is pulling something down over and over again.
To a law from a bunch of empirical observations.
That's exactly what we do. We have lots of empirical observations.
I know you
and
do
test
that,
things over and over, and that's how we come up with the laws. And
that's
sometimes
that's a non sequitur.
Sometimes they're wrong.
So again, that's the non sequitur. So there's not a justification for the belief in the things that you're appealing to. That's my point.
There is a justification. The justification is if we do some physical process,
Okay,
that has the same. We just going in circles here.
no,
If we do a physical
David Hume asked
process
this. Have
that,
you read
that
David
has
Hume?
the same result over
Have
and
you
over
read David
again.
Hume?
Yes, I read David Hume. I
Okay,
like
so then
Donald
you would know
Livingston's
that it's not a
treatise on David Hume.
justification to keep appealing to the fact that the future is like the past, because that doesn't tell you that the future will always be like the past.
It doesn't. It might not be, but I'm going to believe that it is based on all the data I've ever gotten shows that it will be.
Then the belief is not justified. That's the point.
That doesn't bother me at all. Like you asking what I
Okay,
believe
so if we
based on
don't
all
have
the
to
data
be
that I
coherent,
have.
if we don't have to achieve justification.
There's
we
no
do our-
justification to say the future won't be either, though.
Okay, so again, you're appealing to universal laws, which you can't justify. You don't know that.
No,
You're not in a position as a skeptic to make those claims.
No, you're not in a position as a theist to make those claims either.
But I have a justification for how those things are the case.
No, you just say those things are the case. God made those the cases. It has no explanatory power.
Subject to the problems of your worldview.
That has no explanatory power whatsoever. It's just here's a thing
the
that
future
did
is like
everything.
the past because of divine providence.
The future is like the past because that's how it actually is.
But again, that's not an argument. That's just stating your position and begging the question.
No, it's not. It's based on all prior experience that like the future has to be like
doesn't achieve
that.
this.
How
Again,
could
if you'd read Hume, you would know that doesn't achieve the status of justification.
I don't agree with you. I mean, that's the thing.
Okay, so
you could always say there's going to be a black swan and go, well, maybe tomorrow gravity's going to be reversed and everything will go apart instead or something like that. But there's no reason to think that, and there's a lot of experience.
There's no reason not to think that.
There's a whole bunch of reasons to think the opposite. Yeah,
no, there's not. It's
all
a
your prior
sequitur.
experience.
You just appealed to non sequiturs a minute ago, and that's a non sequitur.
Well, we disagree on what our non sequiturs are. You're splitting hairs on just philosophical minutia, saying, "Oh, we can't believe the future's like the past."
Of justification for our beliefs are very important.
Earlier in the debate, I said the difference between knowing something and thinking something is just a degree of confidence. And for me, I could not believe otherwise that the floor is under my feet. Like I cannot say,
but that's
like,
I'm
okay,
not
it's definitely there.
I'm asking.
Yeah, you're like, oh, there's no reason the floor might not be there in the future. I'm like, I think it is. Based on all my prior experience, and I think using the past and data and experiment is a perfectly good foundation to make predictions about the future.
Again, everything that you've said is totally arbitrary. And if we don't have to justify our claims, then I can just repeat everything that I say. Well, okay, well, God exists, and I don't have to justify.
That's why we're just going to keep talking past each other. I mean, you think God exists, and you also believe in monarchy.
But I'm specifically making points and arguments. I'm making arguments about what you're
talking donkeys and a serpent that spoke to people. And
well, you're not in a position to say that that's not possible.
Yeah, yes, I am.
No, you're not, because you can't give an account for possibility at all.
No, I'm basing it on empirical data, and we did not have anybody.
But there is no basis to believe
make the sun stand still.
Do you think that all knowledge
comes be here or flooding the whole earth?
Do you believe that all knowledge comes through sense data?
Well, it originates from sense data, and then obviously,
how do you know that all knowledge originates from sense data?
I don't think all knowledge is from sense data. I said
it all originates in sense data, right?
Right. Well, if you couldn't,
how do you know that?
If you had no senses at all, it'd be hard to think about anything. What's that again?
Do you know what a universal claim is? All knowledge originates in sense data.
I don't think all knowledge originates. Yes. I think all of our knowledge is from our sense data, and then we think about it, combine it. Associationism. I agree with that part of Hume.
So that's a universal claim, right? But you're not in a position to make.
I cannot. I can just say what I believe. I'm not arrogant enough to say this is universal or not. I don't know. I'm going based on what works.
Those are universal quantifiers. So now you can't predicate. Sentences require universals to predicate.
That's just nonsense. I don't have to.
Grammar is nonsense. The laws of logic as they apply to grammar are nonsense.
Well, all our words are arbitrary, right? We just made them up. They still useful and work.
So you think the laws of
logic? You don't think anything arbitrary is worth a damn. It's not objective. Every single word we have, someone made up.
You're not in a position to say anything.
Every word we have, someone made up, and then we have an agreed upon subjective pool, and we come up with rules of grammar and stuff,
but
which
the
changes
concepts-
very slowly, right?
Words are not identical to concepts, right?
They are
They're two
still
different things.
arbitrary, but you
Do
have
think
no,
concepts are
you
arbitrary.
put no mustard in things being arbitrary.
So again, in this whole discussion, you're not even getting the argument. You're not getting the point. I'm making very
Now,
clear
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying the same thing about language as with science and math. Like at the very beginning, we just arbitrarily say,
Yeah,
this
and I'm
is the
saying
word,
that
this
that
is
is
whatever, right?
impossible. That's an impossible
Over
position.
time, even though it's subjective, because we have a whole bunch of different languages, right? This Japanese can be very different from English, whatever.
So
We have a whole bunch of things, and it's not like one is better, and none of them are objective. Like the language is going to
different
evolve.
from the concept. You understand this? The Roman numeral 7
Yeah,
and
I'm
the
getting to
number
that.
7, they
Right.
represent the same thing in
I
the different
know.
symbols.
Yeah,
Okay,
seven
so
of,
your
of
point
a
about
thing.
languages is irrelevant to the point I'm making.
No, it's not. It's if you can have a completely arbitrary system that is subjective.
Do you think the concepts
and
the
it
meaning
works
are arbitrary?
Because of the fallacy you pointed out earlier? You said, well, it's just because a whole bunch of people think something doesn't make it so.
One
A
second,
whole
guys.
bunch of
Before
people think of
And this
language
is
one
the
way and
last
someone
thing.
else doesn't. I mean, that person's just wrong. They're not going to be able to communicate.
hang on, Ryan. I know that there's a bit of a delay on your end. Just 1 second. We are going to take some callers on this debate tonight. We're a little bit over halfway. I just kind of want to get it back on track. I feel like we've been kind of bogged down on this. Jay, if you can kind of take us back into the initial argument and we can kind of take it from there, I'd appreciate it. I kind of feel like we're getting into circular territory here a bit.
Right. So, I mean, to bring it back to what I'm arguing is that when we make claims about the world, when we make claims about what exists, what doesn't exist, what's true, what's objective, what's subjective, what rights are, what freedom is, liberty is, etc. Any of these claims are based on certain things that have to be the case as objective metaphysical principles. They can't be reduced to physical things. They can't be reduced to empirical sense data. None of those things can give an account for. I'm not denying sense data, but I'm saying that to reduce our worldviews to some form of empiricism is self-refuting. And all I have to do is bring it back to the questions of justified true belief and how we give an account for what we believe. We have to have good reasons for our beliefs, not just any reason. And so consistently what I've heard is a bunch of arbitrary statements about this or that position, this or that thing, and never an actual argument for why those things are the case, just restating the position. So all I have to do is keep bringing it back to the question of normativity. Why ought we accept the argument that he's presenting? Why ought we accept the principles he's talking about? The fact that there's no real clear reason why empirical sense data is something that we ought to follow or that we know anything clearly from empirical sense data. I mean, how do we know there's an external world without assuming it to be the case? That was one of the things I brought up as a presuppositional category. So I know that we believe in these things, and I know that we operate as if these things are the case. But my question is, in your view, as a non-theist or whichever agnostic, whatever position it is, I want to know what account do you have for how these things are? Not do you think that they are, but how are they the case? Why ought we to believe in those things? And to just simply state that they are is not an answer or an argument.
Done. The reason I put faith in experience and empirical testing of the world to try to derive at objective principles is because it's been working for so long. And I think we have the aim of figuring out objectivity. And we definitely have an aim of trying to figure out what the natural laws are. I do believe, at least locally, that there are knowable, unchanging laws about nature, and a portion of them are discoverable. But I don't see the need for those laws to be separate from nature itself, like God had to put them there, or that a brain could not have concepts or ideas unless some deity allowed it. I think that's just part of having a mind.
Right. But to ask the question of what a law is, you can't answer that question by simply saying, well, it's just recurring patterns, because what is it that is the thing that's recurring? That's the question.
The law is about the nature, which is based on sense data. So if Newton's laws of motion or whatever is something that has always existed most likely, well, all the way, since we've had baryonic matter, at least, even before we knew about it. Our role is to discover it. And we discovered it through experimentation and empiricism. And then when we do that long enough, we have enough confidence to say, we think this is a physical law. It may come along in the future that, nope, you were close. Guess what? That's wrong. Then we change our paradigm and we say, we think this is a physical law. And we aim at objectivity. But because of our own limitations and stuff, we're, some things I definitely think are certainly true, like the sun is bigger than my house and stuff like that. But there is definitely a gray area on the periphery where, well, we hope it's objective. It seems like it based on experiment. That's the best answer we have. But we keep it open to say, well, we could be wrong, and we keep testing and trying to figure out. When you have dogmatism, it's this is the right answer. God said so, and there's no room to change that and say, oops, we made a mistake. Maybe we shouldn't have enslaved people.
Right. But if you read Quine's paper, Two Dogmas of Empiricism, one of the points that he makes as an empiricist himself is to critique the point that you're making, which is that actually empiricism is a rabid dogmatic position, because the claims of meaningful laws in the universe have the exact same status as the metaphysical claims that Christians make. You don't actually know that there is any meaningful law in the universe. That's an interpretation that you've given of this phenomenon.
Well, that's what I just
said.
That's
a non sequitur leap that your own empirical skeptics point out is unjustified.
I just said the same thing. I said it's a degree of confidence. Like we come up with a law based on experiments, which we're open to admitting could be wrong.
That's the very thing that you accuse me of.
Dogmatism, when you're like, this is definitely...
You have a degree of confidence in something that's not justified, which by your own definition is superstitious religious dogmatism.
No, it's justified. The degree of justification based on the level of experience and bridge principles and so on. That's how we come up with
the question, because what's in question is the meaning of the experience, and you can't just appeal to the experience, because that's why it doesn't work for justification.
You just said Thomas Kuhn critiques what I said when I didn't say anything different than what he said.
Quine.
Excuse me. Yeah, excuse me. I've had a migraine all day. You're Quine, not Kuhn. Very different. It's the same thing I just said. It's not dogmatic. There are people
the point of the
who can make that dogmatic and be like, no, this is the way. There are definitely people that treat like, I'll give you a bunch of examples of things that I think might as well be religion and science. People with the many worlds theory, or maybe we're all in a simulation, or what if there's no external world, and solipsism and all this stuff can all be secular. And to me, it's just as dogmatic. You can have dogmatism without superstition and supernatural.
So Quine's argument is that when you, as an empiricist, attribute meaning to the external world, such as a natural law, that is just as much an unjustified dogma as any metaphysical religious claim. And the argument is because it's a non sequitur, unjustified leap on your own grounds, on your own principle.
I disagree, because it's not a dogma, since I'm not claiming to know it. I'm saying this is, I'm open to it changing, and I'm open to having new data come in.
So empiricism might not be the case?
I think empiricism is our best tool, but we debunk empiricism with empiricism, don't we? Like we have a set of data.
So there's not a good reason to believe in that tool. It's not justified.
It's justified by you're right on that sense. It's not like you can't get the right answer on the first try. That almost never happens. But it's the tool from going back to the practical and pragmatic sense. Like, okay, we get the data, we come up with the best answer we can, and we're perfectly open to that answer changing as we get more information and data. That's the whole scientific process. It's a tool.
You can't.
It's not supposed to be like.
Pragmatism doesn't grant justification, is the point I keep trying to make. Because
the justification is only in that it seems to be working and fits with all the other things that seem to be working.
But that would be circular, because we're asking, why should we believe in that? You're saying because it works. Well, how do we know it works? Because that's what it's supposed to do.
No, it works because we keep testing it and it keeps working. I mean, the more you do it, the more confidence you have. You're never going to get to an absolute, this is definitely true, we did it a million times, whatever. Because we've seen that historically, that we've had a very high degree of confidence in certain empirical beliefs, and they turned out to be wrong.
Right. But that doesn't grant justification. That's the point. There's not a basis to believe in the founding principles of empiricism is the point. And to say,
okay, we're thinking justification in a different way. To me, the justification for using empiricism is because it's so useful.
But again, I'm asking a question in terms of epistemology, not pragmatism. Epistemology. Why do we believe that this is the case, and what's our basis for believing that it is the case and true in the world? And you keep
I think for most people, it's because of all their prior experience, and they believe that the future isn't random, it isn't going to change, that there are
right. But that's a belief, and we need to know how you have that certitude, how you have that.
Well, what I just said, you have a belief in unchanging physical laws based on all the experimentation that you can actually do, show that there are these discoverable laws.
Okay, but David Hume presented all these arguments that I'm making about how that doesn't get you to justification.
He has a problem with induction that I don't agree with. Like, I don't have a problem with subjectivity.
Okay, so how do you answer the objection that he has?
About which thing? Induction?
How does repeated observations in the past justify the future conclusion that it will always be the case?
It's certainly, to me, it is faith. To me, repeated experimentation
has more of empiricism.
No, it has much more weight to say if you're going to choose beliefs, and one thing you do it all of these experiments and it's always the same way.
So we should choose.
Doesn't mean necessarily that the million and second time you do it, that then it's going to be the same. Maybe eventually you get a different answer, whatever.
So again, you keep begging the question and not answering.
Because it's the A or B thing. Like, okay, one side has all this experimentation. Every time I've done it,
again, it's moving the question back a step. Why are we
not going to get the second sentence out?
Why ought we accept that things that work are the right?
Why ought we think the future is going to randomly change? There's no data for that. There's a whole bunch of data saying it doesn't.
Again, begging the question, I'm asking you, why ought we? What's the basis for the ought?
What I just said. If you have a lot of data behind one position,
that begs the question.
And none on the other.
Why ought we accept the lot of data? You see it just moving the problem back a step. How do we derive oughts normativity from all of these is situations?
Because the alternative to ignoring data is no prediction of the future whatsoever, because you would just think, well, if there's no consistency between past and future, then
again, I'm just asking.
It's just random all the time.
Okay, so maybe that's what we should do. Why ought we not do that?
Because all the empirical evidence shows the future isn't random and that there are physical laws.
Begging the question, because that's an interpretation of the physical evidence that we ought to follow.
That's a perfectly good reason to choose that belief.
Okay, so it's circular.
No, you're just. Again, this is just splitting hairs in a word salad. You want to say, what's the justification? You don't have a justification with the God thing.
Long time epistemic debate for hundreds of years, not splitting.
Right. It never gets resolved.
Well, because atheism doesn't have a way to resolve this. That's the point.
Theism doesn't either. It's just saying my way of doing it is God made all the laws, but all those laws could just exist as intrinsic properties of matter without having a supernatural entity.
You just saying they just exist is not giving an account for them.
Well, we're discovering them, so they exist, and saying God made them doesn't add anything.
Okay, but I'm asking you, what are those laws?
Like, how are those laws? It's a presupposition, like, what's the proof that a God exists?
So you're saying you do agree that there are immaterial.
It's just God was just sitting around for infinity and then decided to create stuff and make these laws so we can argue about them.
Well, a divine mind does have a way to justify these kinds of principles.
And living inside of animals and monarchy and all the rest of it. Like that, I don't want to dunk on the Bible. I really don't. And like I said in the beginning, I'm not interested at all at arguing about deism and stuff, because I know we're just going to keep talking past each other. Like, I don't think, I don't have any problem with empiricism. I don't think it's going to answer much outside of its own realm. Like, it's useful for science and math. It doesn't really give you good. You're going to have to use philosophy for questions of philosophy about like ethics, aesthetics, and things like that. There's a whole bunch of different schools on that. I have my opinion, but I really don't care what someone's religion is or isn't. And I really don't find it necessary to have a god or gods or goddesses or whatever god to exist in order for nature to have physical laws.
So there's, again, and I'm trying to be
how do you know you have physical laws? We don't, but our confidence in it is based on all of our experimentation on it. That's not good enough for you. You're like, no, it's got to have a divine origin or it can't exist.
There's a divorce here between assertions and arguments. And so all of what I'm hearing is psychological reporting of your own beliefs and zero argumentation.
Well, you're the one that wants to argue about that. I didn't. I was like, you asked me, why do you believe this? I don't see the necessity of having to have a divinity in order for matter to have natural laws.
So
you haven't given me a reason
about
why.
how you know that there are laws.
Your reason is if not A, it has
how
to
do you
be
justify belief in a law? And your answer was
same reason you justify belief in God. There just is one, and it made the laws.
No, that's not the argument that I gave. I didn't say it just is the case.
What's the justification for belief in God
versus
some other God?
By the impossibility of the contrary. The worldview that you're presenting does not have an account for any of these things. It's called a transcendental argument.
Right. If not A, it has to be B. Like, explain the nature of the entire universe. Otherwise, Zeus is real.
No, again, divine conceptualism gives a basis for there being immaterial, invariant, abstract objects, concepts, universals, all the things that I've been arguing for in this debate, which you need in your system, but you also negate by saying that they don't exist, but at the same time using them. So
I don't think any of those things don't exist. That's your paradigm.
But you don't have a way to explain them, and your worldview negates the possibility of those things existing. That's the argument. That is the argument.
Worldview is materialism and physicalism, and it isn't. I don't think.
I talked about justification for the specific laws, categories, and things I listed, and you said they just are.
These are things that we discover by doing experiments in the world.
Well, you're saying that, but I'm saying you don't have a rational reason to believe in those things. And I've given you about 10 different
You don't think it's rational. Like I said, like laws of motion existed before we discovered them.
I mean,
they were already there.
That's not an argument. You're just reporting things that you think.
You can act like that's not an argument.
It's not an argument. You have no knowledge of that. Did you empirically observe? Did you empirically observe that?
Hold on. Then the alternative is.
Did you empirically observe that?
The alternative is.
Did you empirically observe what was going on millions of years ago?
I wasn't even born yet when they were discovered.
Okay, so as an empiricist, you don't have a basis to believe that.
No, because you're saying the alternative, since you're doing the A not B thing, then the laws of motion didn't exist until we discovered them, or they always existed and then we discovered them.
Again, you're not understanding that I'm asking on your worldview how you have a basis to believe that. I don't need you to tell me you believe that. We already know that. But I'm saying, how is that a reason rational belief in your view?
The same, like the impossibility of the alternative. The same thing you just said.
I'm asking you a specific question that you're not answering. You made a claim about what happened millions of years ago, and I'm saying, but as an empiricist, you don't have a basis to believe that or know that.
It's not millions of years ago. Like Newton's laws of motion were from.
You said that they were always the case prior to their discovery, right?
Billions of years ago. But
how do you know, as an empiricist, what happened billions of years ago?
Well, I don't know everything that happened billions of years ago.
You know anything about that at all? Did you observe that as an empiricist?
You can observe light from billions of years ago. Yes.
So, did you observe that specifically billions of years ago?
I didn't, but other people have.
Okay, so you don't have a basis as an empiricist to believe.
No, that's nonsense. You're acting like empiricism. You're reducing empiricism purely to
position.
No, it's not.
It's the logic of your own position.
It's a total straw man to say that people can't use reasoning and logic.
It's not that you can't use it. It's that you don't have an explanation for its use. Do you see that's two different points?
I know those are two different points, and I disagree that I understand that you.
How is that not a good argument? How is that not a good challenge to what you're saying?
You want to say, prove these physical laws existed before they got discovered. You have no reason to think
as your position as an empiricist. I'm not an empiricist.
Okay, well, if there are unchanging physical laws about nature, and then we discover one, then it makes sense that those laws were still that way before we discovered.
You're begging the question. I'm asking you that you knew that was always the case. You're saying because I discovered it was always
The most reasonable position is if they are from the point we discovered it onward, then that would also
you don't understand why that's an unjustified leap. You're not justified in making that leap.
I think we're perfectly justified in making that leap.
That's great that you think that, but it doesn't follow. You don't know.
As an empiricist, I mean, I disagree with all the things you're saying. Like, I don't think that you can make a leap from, even if you have a deist God, to this very specific Christian God of the Bible, and especially boil down to the.
Let me put it this way. So the principle of uniformity in nature, right? So your argument that the laws would have always been the case relies on another principle that the universe operates in this uniform way. Do you observe the principle of uniformity itself?
Yes, based on experimentation, that is a reasonable conclusion, because we do it over and over again. And that gives us the best data that we have.
The principle itself.
Yep. That principle is also discoverable by sense data.
So the phenomena are not the principle itself. You said the principle is a name that we invent for this, right?
The principle is a name we invent for what? You lost me there. What, describing an action in nature? Yeah, well, we have a series of actions in nature, and we develop laws based on the best data we have. That's what we actually do.
Law, and it's not a justified move, because as an empiricist, you don't observe that this always is the case. So it's a faith-based position. It's a dogma.
It is based on it's faith that's tied to empirical evidence that you can test over and over again, and is open to change.
You're just restating the problem that I've asked you 20 times, that it doesn't grant you justification to say that it's been this way in the past, and you don't know that it's always been this way in the past.
I disagree. I think you do have justification.
I understand you disagree, but the argument I said was that this,
because you have no data saying otherwise. You have no data saying it wasn't this way in the past.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the principle itself is true.
No, you're basing your beliefs on the data.
Uniformity in nature.
Guys, one at a time. One at a time. Go ahead. Let's start with. Hang on, Jay. Hang on.
Let's start with what you are observing itself.
Let's start with Mr. Dawson. We've started with you a couple of times when we've had to break these up. Go ahead, Mr. Dawson.
Yeah, it's just going in circles, because every time I start to say about, okay, we recognize some pattern, we have a hypothesis, we think, okay, maybe there's a rule here, maybe there's a law here.
I'm asking how you know it's a pattern.
See, like, I don't get to the second part ever. You figure out the patterns, which is not perfect because we get them wrong, but we figure out the patterns the best we can subjectively through collecting data with the aim of finding an objective truth.
Yeah,
and I keep collect a lot of data. I know what you're going to ask. And then how do you know that? Why is that justified? Uniformity in nature. There's a lot more evidence to believe that is the case than that it isn't the case. Yeah, and so we decide that there is uniformity in nature because it correlates with all the data that we have.
But that is irrelevant to the question that's being asked, which is that the principle itself is the case. Which is,
how is that irrelevant? Why is it an unreasonable position to say all the data?
Because you're an empiricist. Because you're an empiricist. You don't understand this. By being an empiricist, you limit yourself in what you can say. You can't then go outside of empiricism and make claims about universal states of affairs by the limits of your system.
I disagree that that's a limit of empiricism. I think you can completely derive universals, or tacit universe, whatever you believe is objective from.
That's a dogmatism, because there's no way for you to get. How do you have knowledge of universals? What's a universal?
Well, you're not going to, again, like I said in the beginning, you're not going to absolutely know. You just have a degree of confidence based on a lot of data saying yes, and almost none or none saying otherwise.
Right. So, but language and the possibility of predication and saying any, right, those are universal claims. Those would be not possible in your view. You would have they would be no different than me saying God exists.
It's qualified by saying that you have. You say all the data you have, not all the data. You're never going to have.
Have you read
all the data, right?
Popper points this out. Popper says it doesn't matter how many particulars you have.
Yes,
it doesn't grant you a universal claim.
Well, I ain't saying we have all the data.
It doesn't
Never
matter.
would.
The stack of data doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah,
get
it
you to
does.
universality.
It absolutely matters. You're not going to
You-
get it in
How,
universality.
as
Never
an,
going to.
you don't understand as an empiricist that you can't make a universal claim. This is a really simple point. You can do it, but you can't justify that you can do that.
Right, which is why whatever claims you make in empiricism are perfectly open to be changed with more data.
Okay, so then they're not universal. There are no universals. You can't have it both ways.
Right. It's just the aim of objectivity, and it's a long process of finding out what we believe are the laws of nature based on the data that we are able to get.
Okay, so
and we
can't
will
be
probably
right. So,
not know the grand nature of everything because we are not going to have all the data.
Right. So in your view, there are universals when you want to use them, but they also don't exist.
No, I'm saying if there are universals, what access do we have to those other than reasoning and experimentation and so on?
Well, as a theist, I have a great basis to believe in universals.
Well, yeah, you think so. So then you have.
Well, I'm demonstrating how I have a basis.
Then because you have
out that your position has no basis for anything like that.
So since yours is divinely inspired, you have the perfect ethics and metaphysics and so forth.
I said at the beginning we have a justification for those things, not the perfect version.
Okay, that's all right. Fair enough. That's fine.
All right,
I have
guys.
to say, I have to add something to a request from somebody. Sometimes I butt head with them, sometimes I don't. I consider him a friend. His name is Adam Green, who really wants to talk to Jay about religiosity and all that. Sorry, I'm not brushed up on Kuhn and Quine and all these philosophers. It's been about 20 years since I looked at it, but I try to give you, since I was already scheduled to do this, I'll argue about the philosophy of science, but I have like completely no motivation, prep, or anything. So I apologize for that. But I feel like for me, empiricism works just fine. I know you're gonna say he's begging a question, but I don't think you really are justifying whether you have a theological stance or not. Any way around gathering data and coming up with discoveries of physical laws. Like every physical law we think we know, we acquired through both experimentation, which is not limited to only the physical processes. It's also our combination of facts and contemplation and reason and all that. None of that, I don't think, needs a deity to create. That's just part of the mind. And that's based on many, many years of people being able to think and decide things. I think the argument from free will is much more interesting. The free will versus determinism argument. And that I'm agnostic about. Like, I kind of favor free will, it seems like, which could also be an intrinsic property of matter. Could also come from a divine being. I'm open to that too. But I just don't know enough about the brain to have that. I'd kick that over to like Roger Penrose or people who study that. I'm not a biologist. I don't care about these. As I said in the beginning, I think the results are the same. I've met great Christians, great Muslims, great Jews, and I've met some shitty ones of all those categories too. The epistemological claims and things don't really excite me or matter to me so much as how people actually behave. And as I said in the beginning, which I think Jay probably wouldn't even disagree with, I have way more concern with the way I feel like religion has been subverted by commercial and business interests and is being used to divide and pit people against one another. And in particular, for me, all the millions of dollars from well-meaning people that are going to an apartheid state in Israel to support Zionism. And yes, I know there are secular and religious Zionists. I think that's just a thing. That's a greed thing more than a theological thing.
Okay. With that, Jay, we have a ton of backed up callers. You want to go ahead and give a closing statement, and we're going to open up the phone lines for the callers. Can you stick around for just a little while, Mr. Dawson, for some calls?
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not looking at the screen. I'm trying to avoid light. I've had migraines all from September.
Migraines suck, and we sure appreciate you coming on.
Why I'm wearing a hat and looking at the floor and talking all slow, like my head's kind of explode.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Jay. You have 7 minutes.
I would just say in conclusion that, the argument, the way I usually try to take the transcendental argument is to point out a lot of the epistemic universal type claims and the status of logical laws and universals in a metaphysical way. What are they? Where are they? How are they? These are the questions I usually like to go to, because anytime we make sentences, anytime we predicate, anytime we make arguments in debate, we're relying on these immaterial, invariant, abstract things. And so to ask what those things are, where they are, how they are, to me, are very important, fundamental types of questions. So they move out of the domain of empirical sense data and evidentialism into meta questions, meta logic, meta ethics, meta epistemology, because I want to know the basis for those things, because they're prior to knowledge claims. Okay. And in my view, the Christian paradigm, because we have a deity who is an omniscient divine mind, the logical principles and structures that exist in the world objectively are a mirror and a reflection of what's in the divine mind. So it makes sense that there would be a cohesion, a coherence between the principles that underlie the possibility of cognition, like knowledge, causality, telos, the one and the many, universals, laws of logic, time-space relations, the self, regularity in nature, uniformity of nature. All these things are explanatory in the Christian paradigm. They make sense. They cohere in the Christian paradigm because of that metaphysic, because of that ethic, because of that epistemology. And what I was trying to get at when I was asking for in terms of Ryan's worldview, to me, just seemed like kind of a reliance on things out of the Enlightenment from Hume and whatnot. And I just didn't hear anything that approached something anywhere close to a justification for why that is the case or why we ought to believe those things.
Appreciate that, Jay. And then Mr. Dawson, you can go ahead with a closing statement yourself before we take callers.
Yeah, I think the division there is Jay seems to be saying there's all these physical things, and then any thoughts about them or concepts or ideas, whatever, immaterial things, which definitely exist, like math exists in the senses like it's a useful tool to apply to the world. But I still think that all our thoughts and concepts are still about the sense data, and that's the relationship. And it's like, I try to give an example of like an object and then an object moving. The movement isn't like part of the structure of the object. It's a description about what it's doing, but it's not physical in the sense of like touchable or tangible. It's sort of wordplay on limiting what physical is. All the attributes of physical things are also a part of existence. Like the things that exist, like thoughts and things like that, are, I know some people argue those are also physical, but you know what I mean? Like that's also part of the reality. And it's not, I'm not trying to be reductionist and say, nope, just atoms, there's nothing else. Like, of course you can derive combinations of facts, and Hume's went into that too with his bit on impressions and his associationism. But I didn't see the leap from trying to prove what I would consider a deist entity to Orthodox Christianity, which is definitely a lot more than metaphysical claims and epistemology. It's very specific religious text, which in my mind has a lot of immoral prescriptions in it, or used to. I think Christianity, like any other religion, evolves with the science and reinterprets things until they don't mean what they say anymore, so that they sound less ridiculous.
We appreciate that closing statement, Mr. Dawson. It's a mixed bag. We don't know who's winning in the poll just yet. I guess we're going to find out. There will be an after-debate poll that you guys can vote on to determine who you thought won the debate. We do have to get to our callers before we get to the super chats. It's it's an engagement thing. People enjoy those types of things. Father Deacon, you're a first caller. Go ahead with your question.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
So, I was just wondering, Ryan, you were making claims about subjectivity and that we can't objectively know, but at the same time, you were making a lot of objective statements about how we observe data. If we think about it too, that you're making an objective statement about subjectivity and various things like that too. And so obviously that's going to become a problem too. And one thing that we often forget about when we move into trying to take, I guess I'll be charitable, modest epistemic position is probably why you're wanting to say that, look, we'll just, I can't make these objective statements. That comes with consequences. And one of the consequences is that subjectivity means that I, the person in either the moral or the epistemic standard. And if you want to go with that, it does come with a heavy cost. And that heavy cost would be, I can't make any moral or intellectual progress. Why? Because if I'm the standard, if what I believe is true, relevant to me, then how can we admit that we ever learn or grow, either intellectually or morally? And so I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. Most people go after the kind of contradictory nature of making subjective claims like that. But think about that. That seems to be a big problem, is that if I go that route as far as saying that everything's subjective, then I set the stage for myself not making any moral or intellectual progress. And so that's kind of more of a common sense argument. It flies in the face of kind of our intuitions and common sense. So I just throw that out there for you to think about.
Can I respond to that real fast?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What I was talking about is a subjectivity. Like if we gather a bunch of data, probably is going to be a pretty good general agreement on what we think that data is, but it's still going to be a subjective interpretation of the data. Like each person, some of it might be so obvious that it seems like, nah, this is objective. We all agree on X or whatever. But obviously there are examples where the same data comes in and people have vastly different opinions on it. And that's where it is subjective, and the game is the judge of whether or not you were objective or at least close to it is whether it worked. And so you start with all these opinions on what the data is, and the one that proves the test of time and seems to work in the world probably works because it's actually matches what is real. And so that's the experiment part. And then you refine your positions on the data. The idea that like, oh, I just got it objectively right on the first shot, really low statistic of saying, yep, I got this data, I interpreted it right, and that's never going to change. And, hooray for me. That's the part I was saying subjective is like, I agree. Like, yeah,
I mean, if you're saying
data. You can't get too far off of something like the sun's not bright. That stuff's like just silly to me, but like, you know what I'm saying? We have problems in science or even historical claims or whatever that you gotta get a bunch of different people's opinion and hash it out with the best evidence you have and get the best conclusion you have. But it's not going to be objective. You're going to think it's objective and you want to believe it is, but it's not actually objective. You're still being subjective because you have to interpret the data.
So if you're saying there's subjects involved in that will have their beliefs, it can either be true or false, I think that's not a contentious position that anybody would disagree with. But I think what Jay was trying to ask is, we all come with different standards on how we judge, exactly like you said. For example, what works. It's not just like what works is something that we all just agree on and is accessible. What works for one person may not work for another, as far as that kind of that standard.
Oh, I was thinking, sorry.
Is kind of more fundamental question about that. What is the criteria to actually judge what works and judge even with ourselves? Like, was I wrong or is this person wrong? So I think he was going, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, kind of more deeper issues. I think, Ryan, what you were saying is that what's very clear people have different beliefs and different criteria. Jay's asking a normative question about what ought the correct criteria be. Is that, did I kind of spell that out correctly? Both Ryan, your position, and Jay?
I thought you were talking about empirical questions like what do we think? How do we build a bridge? Right. Well, we tried a lot of things, and man, this set of, physical laws seems to work pretty damn well. We've been building bridges for thousands of years, whatever. And this other architectural data, that just doesn't work, right? And from prudence, I think you can have a high degree of confidence, even though in the future, maybe it'll all change, but not for me. I feel like if you have a long set of data that says, hey, if you build a bridge in this way, it'll stay up a long time and work. Like, the fact that it works shows that probably your assumptions about the physical laws are correct, or it's some massive coincidental correlation, which it could be, but probably it's because it's true.
Well, I want to bring up a couple things.
Hold on,
hang on. I'm sorry. We can't stay on any one.
That's very different than like an ethical.
But I did want to give.
You can stay on my call for as long as you want.
I can't even do it for you, Father. Can't even do it for you. But Jay, I did want to give you a chance to respond.
Right. So when we say that things are the case because they work, the reason I kept restating and stressing the fact that that doesn't achieve justification is because it kind of assumes what's being asked, right? We're asking not does it get us to a goal? We're asking about the principle itself, right? The principle of the thing itself, and how do we have a justification to believe in that? And to say, well, because it works is begging the question, because the value judgments that we have don't grant us justification in terms of pragmatism. Pragmatism will never get you justification because it's not fit to answer the question that justification is after. So an anthropocentric thing like the bridges work, we're justified in building bridges because they work. Well, that's relative to human beings. What I'm asking for is something more objective, in the sense of, how do principles in the world work objectively? How is there such a thing as a law of logic that works in the world to build a bridge? How does that work in a worldview where we have pure chaos, materialism, etc.? Not saying that that's your position, but I'm saying in those types of atheistic positions, the principles themselves, not how they relate to individual human beings for human goals and the arbitrary end goals that we've chosen. Well, I like this because it works. I mean, nuclear bombs work, right? They achieve their goal. They're pragmatic. They work. Was that a justification for their use because they work? Well, so saying something works in pragmatism does not have anything to do with the justification for the principles themselves.
This is two very different.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Can we go on this? Or okay. Well, like that, a bomb works is empirical, and the science of splitting an atom. Yeah. But
that's why it doesn't achieve justification.
Well, the justification is like, well, look, this works. So these laws, these physical laws and chemical laws, we came up probably correct.
That's not what the question of justification is.
The decision to drop a bomb on a city is a political decision. Not
again, you're missing what justification is after. It's not. It's none of those things.
We're just going to disagree. I think that the justification.
Can I add one thing?
Justification to give you confidence in that belief is that it works every time you do it.
Very, very quickly, Father.
So, just real quick, and you'll see this in Quine and Duhigg and a lot of these people in the philosophy of science were able to demonstrate that you can have multiple contradicting scientific paradigms that all work perfectly well.
Yep.
That doesn't get you to the question of veracity, a connection to the world, let alone justification. So that's an additional failure of
the underdetermination of data problem.
Of data thesis. Yeah, that's another kind of failure of the pragmatist argument too. It doesn't do what you want or what you're saying it should do.
I don't think it does lead to objective, like something is just solid, objective, never changing. I say that objectivity is the aim, and I just think the closest way we can get to that is through experiment and empirical processes.
But that wouldn't solve the underdetermination of data problem. That's the objection.
One of the neither is theology. Like that's what I've said like 12 times.
Thank you so much for
I
that
don't
call,
have a solution to that in either paradigm.
Father Deacon Ananias. We appreciate that so much. Green Feathers, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Appreciate the everything you guys been talking about. I just like to say, like, it seems like your position is kind of contradictory in a lot of regards to what you've been saying, but the empirical data that you're talking about in nature, the objective underlying truth to that is, from our perspective, what I really think that to bridge the gap that intellectually, from a third party perspective, that you're missing is logos theology, logos based creation, which is that all the objective and subjective observations and truths in nature, which you keep referencing, the data that can be gathered by the self, and you want to, you keep referencing other world religions and stuff like that, yet you're saying that religions are money grabbing and all this stuff, but then you keep circling back to attacking Christianity, which is the underlying truth to all of creation. I've spent so much time out in nature and in creation, and all of that subjective, for me, I can say, at least in that perspective, which you're arguing from, is empirically based on data correct, is that Jesus created everything, logos-based creation, on himself, his crucifixion, all of that. The stories of the Bible themselves play out in all of our lives in various ways, and that's why it's the objective universal truth. It's also in nature. You go out and you can, not exclusively from our perspective as Christians, find Jesus in that sense. But what I'm getting at is that the totality of him and of creation is rooted in him, his person, and in his story.
I just want to respond to that. I do not say that religions are money grabbing. It's not an intrinsic part of any religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever. There are just people who are greedy. That's not because of their theology. It's just part of their personality. And they have subverted religion.
You did say that religions evolve over time eventually, and now that they're all just corrupted forms of themselves to some materialistic version.
No.
You did say
no. There are, well, look, you have different people of the same faith that practice it differently. Dr. Ron Paul's a lot different than Pat Robertson. They're televangelists, clearly, that's just grifting and making money.
The way that their lives, that the empirical data that their lives.
Hang on, Green Feathers, this is your last follow-up. Make it count.
The way in which every single person lives their lives and the empirical data that can be gathered on that alone through observation, if you don't have that gauge of truthfulness in regards to where that person is in the totality of the spectrum, intellectually and spiritually, we can encompass and comprehend as people, like either you got mental issues or something, whatever. If that radar is not going off right, as to out by yourself, interacting with others or in nature, observing or attempting to acquire truth in your life, it will lead you to Jesus. That's the whole point. Orthodoxy is the totality and fullness of that through the sacraments.
Go ahead with your response, Mr. Dawson.
I mean, I live in Japan, which is 99% not monotheistic, much less finding truth in Jesus. I mean, I'm glad that worked for you, but I've been in nature and all that too, and I don't find that as a truth, and neither do a few billion people. I don't know what else to say to that. Like, that religion was invented at a specific point in time.
Let him finish, Green Feathers. Go ahead, Mr. Dawson.
People existed before the faith was made, before Jesus was on the planet, and I'm just granting that he was. You're not getting your morals and all that from Christianity. You can, But plenty of people have moral systems, practice logic, and all that without that faith. That's not even what Jay and I were arguing about. He was arguing about what is the progenitor of these logical laws and stuff. I'm
But
saying we discover them.
You're not providing an objective claim to your foundation.
Green feathers. I'm sorry, but that was your last follow-up.
I want to point out something if I can. One thing I would say really quickly is if you go watch the debate that I did with Stefan Molyneux, several of the points that I brought up there are relevant here because there's kind of perennial problems for any empiricist position. Father Deacon mentioned one of those, which is the underdetermination of data problem. There's the problem of there not really being properly basic beliefs. There's a problem of the external world. There's a problem of induction. There's another problem that's famously called in the philosophy of mind, it's called the problem, the myth of the given. And so a lot of empiricism relies on this notion that there's a causally meaningful impression of external data upon us that we just assume has meaning, which we just assume has some significance from externally caused sense data. And these are, again, just perennial problems that empiricist philosophers themselves have been wrestling with for a long time, particularly Wilfred Seller's book, Empiricism, the Philosophy of Mind. So if people want to understand more of the critiques that I'm giving, you could go read a book like that.
Thanks for that, Jay. Appreciate it. We need to move on to our next caller. Liam, you've been waiting very patiently. We certainly appreciate that. Go ahead with your question. I'm sorry, Jay, did you want to shout something out real quick?
No, I was just showing the book.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Liam.
It's Liam, but I've been called worse.
Yeah, that's just for saying that, right? Like just for saying Liam. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead with your question. Go ahead with your question.
No, I appreciate this very much, Andrew. Jay.
It's Liam. Just ask your fucking question, man.
His name.
Okay, ask your question.
My question is ultimately, I had some lead up to this because I appreciate Ryan and his brilliant mind and Jay and his theological depth of philosophical knowledge. And we get wrapped up in the epistemological question of what is first, mind or matter. But really, when you come to it, it's Christianity was created by Jews to get Gentiles to worship a non-Jewish God, to abandon their tradition. And to ultimately, why does this matter? Because America is fighting Israel's wars because of this Christian psyop. Debate Adam Green on this already. Thank you.
I wouldn't disagree that.
Call it right, Liam. But anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Dawson.
Well, yeah, there are Jewish Zionists, very prominent and powerful positions that are dragging U.S. foreign policy to fight on Israel's behalf of the Holy Land, for the self-proclaimed chosen race of God, all that. But, it's not the Jews, it's those Jews. And there are a lot of cucks in Christianity that, 2/3 of their holy book is all from Judaism. Their creation story is from Judaism. They worship a Jewish God, and so they have an affinity for Jews. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are going to defend whatever Israel does. And of course, if they think that they have an objective ethic that can't be challenged, then God says, save the Jews, and that's what they're going to do. And they don't mind bulldozing down houses and killing Palestinians and going to war of the rock and all the rest of the crap. And that's my major problem with how religion is practiced by some people. I don't give a damn about the epistemological claims and stuff. I care about how they behave. And what they're doing because of their beliefs is sending billions of dollars to an apartheid state to support racial supremacists and utterly pointless violence over the indigenous people of Palestine and into Lebanon and into Syria. And, this is what matters to me. Like we spent trillions of dollars going to war with Iraq on a pack of lies. But our press is completely Zionist run. And I don't want to go too deep into that because this is on YouTube, and even talking about this will get your channel erased.
Yeah, well, let's not do that then. Liam, I do appreciate your call
it's
very
fucking
much.
Liam.
It's
wait. I'm sorry. Say well, hang on. I'm sorry. Say your name again. Say your name again. Yeah, shut up. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
Each other already, that guy.
Well, he was
No,
like, why won't
no.
you debate Adam Green? Well, because I don't think Adam Green has any knowledge of the topics that I offer to debate. So I offer philosophical argumentation for my position. And I've listened to Adam Green do debates, and he doesn't have any knowledge of those topics at all. And just like that guy, I mean, the argument that it's a Christianity, a Jewish psyop is just so fundamentally ignorant when it comes to the history of Christianity and biblical theology that it doesn't even really deserve a response.
Okay. Next caller, DG. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. I tuned in a bit late, so I might have missed this, but I was just curious where Jay's disconnect is with where, just because we can observe and recreate experiments showing, so-called laws of the universe, that it must be because of or proof of God. I'm not saying that it isn't, and I don't think Ryan was either, but just curious what your take is on that.
Yes, I made a very clear argument that's called the transcendental argument, where I argued from transcendental categories, which are prior to any knowledge claim. So the argument is that anytime you make any knowledge claim, doesn't matter what, you're talking about pencils, you're talking about universal laws, physics, whatever, certain things have to be the case for you to make those claims at all. To make any sentences requires a certain structure to the world, certain structure to thought. There's a certain logic that goes into language, for example. Those principles can't be reduced to or identified to any physical objects. Okay, go watch the debate with Stefan Molyneux. That was a whole debate, was over that. So what are those things? Where are those things? And how are those things, given the fact that they're prior to any knowledge claim? My argument was that all of the things that I listed that are necessary for that to be the case, I listed the external world, identity over time, the self, time-space relations, universals, laws of logic, immaterial concepts, causality, telos, the one and the many. All of those things are not physical. All of those things work together, they cohere. And how does that work? Well, a type of deity that I argue for gives an account for and explains how those preconditions are the case, how they work. God created the world a certain way. I'm not saying it's true because I say it. I'm saying that the paradigm gives an account for those things. The argument is the other paradigm doesn't give an account for those things. That's the argument.
I think all those immaterial things are about material things. Like, even if you say two of what?
Right. So
some kind of object.
Okay. So where is the law of logic under a microscope? You can't reduce these things to physical things.
Yeah. Again, we disagree on like where you limit physical things. Physical things have attributes.
Right. But I mean, fundamental problems for reductionists would be when you say that there's patterns, when you say that there's commonalities, what are the things that are common between two different things that you say is a pattern?
Yeah, I have not. This is, again, going in circles. I have not made and will not make the case that like thoughts and concepts are just like physical objects. They're about physical objects.
Okay, but that doesn't say what they are.
Caller, do you
We
have
discover what they are through experimentation, and we have a degree of confidence in it. We've said it. I mean, I don't think this is going to change. I think we hit a
It's an
dead end.
ontological question about what the status of them is, and you saying that they're about things doesn't answer that question.
Yeah, it's like different from Platonic forms. You have an ontological origin of things like logic instead of an ontological origin about like the first mover.
Well, it wasn't just the origin. It's a question of how those things are. You're saying that there are these things, and I'm saying, well, in your worldview, please explain how that's possible or what that is. Now, I am not hearing how that is or how that.
Why would it not be? Why would it be impossible? I mean, these are the things we discover through experimentation with nature.
Because the question is not, do you have a belief that you discovered it? It's a question about what is it that you've discovered? How do you have a justification for believing that commonalities possess some common quality? So Plato raises this question. It's about the one and the many, right? What is the status? What is the quality that things share? Because they can't be reduced to the physical objects.
I don't think it has to be reduced to the physical objects. You're
Okay,
saying
so
how
then
you're saying how a physical object behaves.
Right,
Its
so you have a belief
behavior.
in metaphysics. So you have a metaphysical belief now.
Sure. Yeah. The behavior isn't the physical object, but it's still about the physical object. Like you have to have a thing moving for there to be movement.
Okay, but saying that it's about the physical object is not answering the question of what is the ontological status of the thing that is common between them.
That just seems like dogmatic jingoism for theism. Like what the status of the logic between logic is logic. It has nothing to do with
There we go.
deities.
So again, the T-jump level argument. I'm asking a specific question. You're saying it just is.
DG, did you have a follow-up?
That's the same thing as God just is and made everything. I mean, it just is. He's Alpha and Omega.
Two different arguments. I'm not.
I don't believe in
I never said
creation
it just
either.
is.
Like I
I
think
never said that.
matter is eternal. I don't think all was void. I mean, I had those thoughts when I was a little kid, like, well, we didn't come from nothing, yet we're here. So something had to make everything, unless there wasn't a time where all was nothing and matter is eternal.
DG, you can't ask one follow-up. That is rules for the show. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'll pass. I don't think we're going to get much of anywhere.
Okay, thank you
I
so
think
much
I got
for the
a lot of
Hold
word
on.
salad thrown at me.
I replied to
and-
DG. I want to know if he knows or if he wants to reply to what I said.
Well, I don't know. I don't think your belief that, these things we can observe simply exist because your God or your book said so. I mean, they might exist because your God.
Did you hear me
created
say
them.
that? I asked a specific question about the ontological status of the laws and your belief in them, or the common
Well,
properties.
you more or less said that, but
Huh?
You more or less said that these things exist because God, made them, and that might be the case, but.
Well, I made an argument about an entire worldview and all of those preconditions cohering. Very clear argument.
Yeah, it's a lot of word salad.
Right. So you don't know common philosophical terms and you're calling it word salad and just displaying your own ignorance because you don't have an answer to what I said.
I don't think you have an answer for what you're saying.
Good one. Can you get rid of this dude? What a retard.
He's just
Chef, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead with your question.
Hey, this is Ryan. Can you explain, if any, distinction between 7 coconuts and the number 7? And I'll take my answer off air.
Okay, thank you so much for your question.
well, just the number would be a general principle of. I don't know how to do this without using the words, but like 1 more than 6 or whatever. Whereas a coconut is a defined object from the coconut. It's not a tree, is it? It's a fruit, whatever it is. Coconuts are an object, and if there's 7 of them, there's 7 of them. 7 itself obviously can be of objects, time, temperature, just depends on how you're applying it. One's a generality, one's specific.
Jay,
I
did
would
you want
say
to follow
go
up?
watch the debate I did with Steph on Molyneux, because it's about that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Is it Donatus?
Donatus, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to make the Liam mistake. He got pretty upset by that. Anyway, go ahead with your question.
I would say you wouldn't have 7 if you couldn't count coconuts or time or temperature or anything that it's applied to. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
I don't think we could come up with 7ness unless we had some sort of data to divide things into 7s.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, sure. So my question was more for Ryan. I was just going to ask him, like, if what works comes from your value set, then how is that? Like, that's not a justification. Like, it's just begging the question. If what works is coming from your value set to begin with, like, you still haven't given a justification.
Now, the justification is in the confidence that you believe that this is accurate and matches the real world. The fact that it seems to work over and over again gives you confidence that it must correlate to how things actually are. Otherwise, it shouldn't work.
I was talking more from an ethical standpoint.
For ethical questions that are far more complicated, I mean, that again goes back to the problem of having subjective value sets. Like, what would be perfectly acceptable by one group won't be by another, but that is how things are.
But do you see how that's not a justification? It's question begging. It's circular.
It's descriptive about how the world actually is. People do have different value sets, and they do have different ethical sets, and each one of them is trying to say, nah, my set's really objective, yours isn't. But I'm saying they're subjective. The way you can best determine who's objective or the closest to it is the ones that actually match reality.
Caller, we appreciate that. I'm going to let Jay Dyer speak to that. We have to move on to the other callers. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm not. I don't have anything to say. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. I saw you pop in, Jeremiah. We don't have time for you, unfortunately. I have to get to one more caller, and we got to get to the super chats, or we'll never get through them. I do appreciate you calling in, though. Just give me the thumbs up that you hear me. All right. Thanks so much. Chase, go ahead with your question.
Yeah. I'm curious. You say just that prior caller, you said you judge what's going to be closest to objectivity by what matches up with reality. But the question we're asking is, how do you know what matches up with reality?
Are you asking that caller, or are you asking one of us?
Oh, I'm asking you. Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, the best way I feel like that you can get at it is through experimentation and testing.
Okay. And if I say we've done experimentation and testing and therefore we believe Orthodox Christianity is true, if you're going to be consistent, don't you just have to accept that it's true for us?
I do accept that it's true for you, but I have not seen the experiments or tests that prove all the things I considered impossibilities that are prescribed in the Bible and so on. I actually don't know that much of the difference between Orthodox Christianity and Catholicism. I never really cared to look at it even. But I know they have the same creation story, heaven, hell, Jesus is your savior. They've got to be the same core precepts, right? I mean, that's all Christians believe.
Well, I'll leave after this. Thanks for having me on, Andrew.
Of course.
But I just think it's interesting because I think you're totally inconsistent to then try to go and debate anyone and call them wrong and claim something's impossible when you have no standard for objectivity. And so I think it's pretty inconsistent. But I hope your migraine gets better, man. I can tell you're kind of suffering through it. Thanks for staying.
I don't feel like you have to have a perfect objectivity to say something's wrong. You have a really high degree of confidence in things that you know you don't have all the data on or whatever. Like, yeah, I think I have enough. You know, like there's plenty of it's disingenuous for me to just be like, oh, I doubt everything and I have no beliefs because I might be wrong and it might be proven wrong in the future. That just isn't true. Like if I'm being truthful, if I'm being honest would be a better word. It's dishonest for me to be like, nah, I do believe in gravity and I believe in a whole bunch of stuff that might end up being wrong. But I don't sincerely think it is. Like I think that we nailed it. We objectively nailed it on a few things, for sure. And I'm not going to go over all the I'm taller than I was when I was younger and stuff. Like some things are just facts. You know, that really high degree of confidence that that's not going to ever be overturned. But I leave room for a lot of things on the periphery that we don't know answers for, and we don't have that solid confidence for or experimentation. And in my experience, I have not seen I don't think God is, or specifically Christian God, is something that's proven through like a scientific experiment. Where Jay's got the transcendental argument is totally different. It's saying like, well, we have all these immaterial things like logic and stuff. Since it can't come from the material, it has to come from this divine being. I'm saying it absolutely can come from the material. It's just qualities of the material. It's not the atoms. We're just going in circles.
All right. Appreciate that. So we managed to nail it right at 2 hours with the callers. I'm pretty happy about that. We have some super chats. I don't know if you're able to stick around for those or not. Dawson?
I'm so sorry, and I'll do this whenever, but I got to tap out. I feel like
no problem. Jay, do you mind taking some super chats?
No, that's fine. And thanks for coming, Ryan. It was a lively, passionate discussion. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you. Like, I'd like to talk about just philosophy in general. I'm more into like economic philosophy and stuff, but it would have been fun if I didn't have such a fucking headache. Like,
no, man, go take care of yourself. It's no problem. We appreciate you coming on this evening.
Stuff like like I get to talk to Jay. This is gonna be fun, and then they're like, no, it's not. I have a fucking migraine, and I don't feel like doing this shit.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we are happy that you came on.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it. It was lively.
And by the way, just so you know,
Yeah.
we don't care about what you call content on this. If you want to post it up to your own channel, whatever you want to do with it, it's
Well,
more than fine with us.
See, all the things I really want to say, I can't say because you'd lose your YouTube.
Yeah, well, that's
So,
I'm glad you're not saying
I'm
them.
like
then.
dancing around this stuff. I'm talking about things I don't care about at all because, like, I got this like other thing, major issue that cannot be brought up, which kind of shows you,
Yeah.
you know. To run
Well,
rules
I don't think you'd find that much
emphasize,
disagreement probably on some of those things, Mr. Dawson. But
I don't think so. I think we'd agree on a lot of the corruption and stuff.
yeah, but like Jay Dyer was saying, we sure appreciate it. I'm going to let you go tend to your headache, and thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to shout yourself out real quick before you go?
So I do the anti-neocon report. It's mostly about politics and current events, and I'm going to be doing a Ukraine war update if people are interested in what's going on there. It's pretty sad, but today, and so it's ancreport.com. And we have a lot of stuff up about September 11th, since it was the anniversary yesterday in the US, and not the kooky Alex Jones version, like the grown-up version of what happened. And I think that might be a curiosity for a lot of people if you want to check it out. And then I'm on cozy.tv/Dawson, and I have nothing to do with the other creators on Cozy. I'm just doing my own thing. They're doing their thing. So no guilt by association, no praise by association either.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Dawson. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for sticking around for the super chats, Jay. And by the way, Father Deacon, if you're still watching, I know you're still watching, you can pop back on while we vet the super chats if you want to. That's fine with me. Well, Emmanuel for 100 pesos says, say we're lost at sea. I use a navigation technique to determine we should go right. You throw a lucky charm and it points right. I think it does matter how we come to a conclusion beyond practicality. And I think there was a lot of that was tied in with your point, Jay.
Right. So we need good reasons for why we believe what we believe, not just any reasons. And to say it works is just begging the question, because we're not asking from an anthropocentric vantage point, does this achieve some human end? We're asking, why should we believe in the principles themselves? Or why should we think that we ought to believe in those kinds of principles? So there's an ontological question, the question of the status of those rules, laws. And then there's the normative question of, ought we to believe in those kinds of rules and laws? And those are questions that, again, I don't think it was conveyed as to what I was asking for.
Based Beard for $1.99, who has the best name on the internet I've heard so far, says, Based Nerd Spurgatron officially activated. I'm okay with that. Green Feathers for $5 says, be sure to subscribe. What's the matter with you, Father? You can't even get your mic to work and your camera. Get it to work, buddy. Get it to work. He says, be sure to subscribe to the Crucible and Jay Dyer. We will have the links, of course, to Jay Dyer below this. I think we already actually have them up, but if we don't, we always put the links up. We'll also have a poll in the community tab. Make sure you guys go and vote on the poll. Made by Jim Bob for $9.99. Also, thank you for your subscription. Says Ryan, if what is true is based on what works and believing something untrue can keep you alive, then what does works mean? I think that's a good question. Ryan's not here to field it, but can you field it, Jay?
Well, we could also pose all kinds of situations where things that are bad work. So we would then be in a situation of anything that, quote, works now is justified in believing or doing. And that doesn't seem to make any sense.
Did you want to open your mouth and talk on that one? Yes. Based Beard for another $5 says, Based Nerd Spurgatron is activated. We appreciate that, and it is true, and he probably does have a based beard. My pay-per-view ticket fee supporting the outreach from Stephen Mulroney for $10. We appreciate that. very much. Hang on, I'm pulling up a couple of more. How you been, Father Deacon Ananias? How's everything going? I'm told that there's going to possibly be another Montanica.
Oh yeah, there's always
is that true? Is there going to be one?
unto the ages of ages. Yeah,
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
yeah.
Hang on
I'm
a second.
looking
I'm just
forward
pulling more of
to
these up.
Jay. You've got to come this year.
We'll see.
You're predetermined to come.
Pedro has decreed it. Made by Jim Bob for another $5 says, Ryan, if works to be believed in 6-day creation, how would your worldview argue otherwise without assuming objectivity? That, I think, again, that really kind of ties back in. I know that a lot of these questions were directed at Ryan, but as you guys know, he had to leave. But I think that it's fine for our guest to vet him if he's not here. If you guys want to speak to him, go ahead.
Right. Well, I think that just kind of goes back to the objectivity, subjectivity, back and forth that I kept trying to highlight, which to me seems fundamentally inconsistent.
And Jay, I like what you had to say too. I mean, you get this a lot, that there's a fundamental category error. Jay wasn't asking what people believe and whether they think it's true, but the justifications for that, and what their criteria or justification for their justification criteria would be. So some of these issues are just categorical errors, and so they'll go back to answering something that Jay wasn't asking. Did you feel that was kind of the case?
Yeah, I mean, justification is specific. It's asking specific questions about our beliefs and the good reasons or bad reasons for beliefs. And so we need to hear good reasons. So the next super chat there is that it wasn't a justification. So to say that, well, it's just wrong and it's mean and it's bad, we're asking why. On what basis should we accept that this or that thing is wrong or mean or bad? Doesn't mean I'm arguing for it. It means that if you're going to say things are bad, you're going to have value judgments, then you're going to have to give an account for how there are value judgments in your worldview. And that was the whole point.
So notice how Ryan wanted to pitch you in to a corner and say that, like, so you're agreeing with it. But again, as Jay, you just pointed out, it's a different category, because both you and I might believe slavery's wrong, or washing our hands after using the bathroom is a good thing. That's not the question of whether we agree to that, but what are the reasons that we think that's the case. And as I always make the joke, if you found out my reason that I wash my hands after the bathroom is because I believe that it helps my Bitcoin investments go up, you might actually say that's not a good reason for holding a true belief. And it's very difficult to get people, they just stop at the agreement. Oh, we all believe that this is the case. This is right or wrong or true or false. When you're asking a further question, what are your reasons from your worldview, and how can you justify that?
We appreciate that $5 from you, Maddie. They did address it. Markoff for $2 Canadian. That is one toonie, by the way, for those of you who aren't Canadian, or 2 loonies. He says, haven't seen Andrew drink or smoke tonight. Is he okay? You clearly haven't been paying attention. Sterling Fuentes for $5 says, Ryan, if slavery works to achieve an arbitrary goal, how can it be wrong?
I made this point with a nuclear bomb. Nuclear bombs work very well.
Yeah. And in this book here, we actually covered this last semester when I was teaching ethics too. In some sense, utilitarianism is kind of a pragmatic philosophy too. And you actually have, both with pragmatism and utilitarianism, there's nothing that's intrinsically right or wrong with an action. It's deemed in terms of its consequences or its pragmatism. And so actually, it's really interesting. There's a utilitarian philosopher who was actually held in a concentration camp that actually makes an argument, and it's brought up in here, that slavery could actually be moral if it's optimific, or if we made the case from the pragmatist, as the person who just gave the super chat. What if it works? What if that's the optimific and utilitarian kind of standard? Since nothing intrinsically is good or bad, because you can't give an account for that if you are obviously Ryan, utilitarian, or a pragmatist. So your standard is, I would agree with it as long as it worked. As long as if I was a utilitarian, it's optimific. I mean, doesn't that kind of rub you the wrong way intuitively?
For $5 Canadian, what are Jay and Ryan's thoughts on the recent events in the Ukraine conflict? Jay?
I mean, I've done multiple live streams on the Ukraine on my Rockfin. I have one here on my YouTube channel that's pretty in depth. It's called Liberal Imperium. If anybody wants to go watch Liberal Imperium,
Can you DM me the link? I'll get it down below this so that people can get over there and watch it.
yeah, it's just the yeah, sure.
Okay, and then Donatus for 15 Australian dollars, which I think might be real money, but I'm not sure, says it's good because it works, is dependent on your initial value set. It begs the question, and isn't a justification. Jay constantly kicks people like this on Twitter. He deserves a higher level opponent. Well, it's not for me to speak to that one way or the other. Mark Huth became a new member to the YouTube. We sure appreciate that. Make sure that after this is done, you go make it rain on Jay Dyer. He deserved it. He was a champ the whole debate, and he's still here fielding your super chats. All you plebs out there, you got to show him some love. Jay Poopy for $5 says, Ryan, you don't seem to be a fan of Zionism. How can you call Zionist criteria for choosing their subsets of belief wrong? Now, that's a question. So we usually do moderator questions on this program. I knew we weren't going to have time tonight for me to do that, but that actually came to my mind was, well, I mean, how can you really rage against these other people if they're just following a subset that you consider to be the value set, right? If that's the value set and that's what's moral, what's the problem here? And I'm not sure I would have gotten a great answer there. Jim Bob says, how is dogma wrong if it works for one's goal? That, again, that kind of moves right back into the value set argument that we kind of heard. Nico Pluto for $5. He says nothing. I always appreciate it when Nico Pluto says nothing. But when he pays to say nothing, I appreciate it just a little bit more. Again, you can find both of these guys. You'll find their links underneath. We've done a bunch of shows with the patristic faith members of them, especially Father Deacon. You know, he knows a lot about the demonic, surprisingly. You know, surprisingly, this philosophy guy, they know a lot of shit. Does Ryan not understand the problem of induction? Now, that's interesting. Can you guys speak to that?
I mean, that was just the point that I kept raising with David Hume, was that this is Hume's whole point, that no matter how many observations of an instance, you never get to a universal rule or law.
Guess what we're covering? By the way, I'm teaching epistemology in college, and I kid you not, it's like this is like a setup. We're starting the problem of induction tomorrow in tomorrow's lecture.
Well, there's a good chapter on it in the Bonjour text. So.
It's great, yeah. It's a great. So even if you could be justified in making an inference about an immediate experience, as Hume points out, and almost all philosophers afterwards, what is the justification to make the inference from some past sensed experience to a universal like in conclusion, right? So the question is about the inference, right? The inferential connection between the standard inductive premise that I experienced this so many times, therefore the inductive conclusion of a universal. And as Bonjour points out, it's really good. The inference goes far beyond the information contained in the premise. There it is. And Hume and other philosophers conclude it's not even, you can't even conclude that it's likely. And if people just ignore this. I don't get it.
Do you read bluegrass music notes with those nerdy glasses too? I mean, do you do that when you're before you're practicing? Do you put on those dork glasses and like the Walmart glasses for that, or what?
I don't know what you're talking about.
MM for $5 says people make logical fallacies all the time and don't even realize it. Ryan Dawson. I thought, well, it's kind of funny. Ryan for $5 says Ryan's position is way more ridiculous and incoherent than anything in the Bible. Tough crowd. It's feels like the Dawson supporters aren't out there too much. The Aquarian TV for $10 says Ryan is just being smart and foreign to the theological word salad of JD is actually quite effective in breaking Jay's world down. Well done.
Oh. That sounds like a bunch of word salad to me.
I don't know. You guys can speak to it if you'd like to.
Well, I mean, the majority of the debate was philosophical terminology, not theological terminology. So they didn't even get that right. And if he thinks that the worldview that I have was broken down by 2 hours of not answering or understanding what the question of justification is, then I can't help that person.
You know what? I'd like to just add something really quick on that. Just because somebody says something doesn't make it true. And you see this all the time in debates. And just because somebody says something is word salad doesn't actually make it true, especially if somebody comes in, a child comes into a university professor lecturing on calculus and derivatives and says everything's word salad. Doesn't make it true. We need a justification for that. And just
it's embarrassing to the people saying this who could go read an introduction to epistemology text and they would see all the terminology that we're talking about being used. So they're just displaying their own stupidity and ignorance.
And by the way, I'm also going to put a very good book that I picked up at Orthodox Montanica down in the links too. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I'm not repping your stuff. Yes, your book. I did enjoy it. I finally had some a chance to actually read it, so that was pretty good. John for $9.99 says atheists think we came from bacteria. Talking snakes and donkeys are plausible by comparison. Paladin for $40. Thank you so much for the large super chat. Says, wow, seeing RY on YouTube is like bumping into him into a bar in Fiji. Great seeing you here. I'm a Christian, but I kind of want you to win this. Love the Crucible. Jay is awesome too. It's like, Chatter, by not trying to offend anybody, you offended everybody. I just want to let you know that. Okay. You actually offended everybody by trying not to. So keep up the content, more at Comfy. Yes, you're going to find a lot more content over at the Comfy stream. It's going back live this week. It was down for routine maintenance. We was fishes. Canadian $2 says, does Ryan believe we went to the moon? Well, he's not here to answer that, but if they had the right set values, I'm guessing we probably went. Majorian for $10 says, let's hear the case for monarchy versus republics. Did you guys have anything you wanted to speak to on that?
Well, I mean, he's gone, so
yeah, that's true. He's gone, but I mean, they still kind of want to get the viewpoint on monarchy. That's kind of a big thing lately, and I think that has to do with the fact that there's a lot more monarchy going on the world stage. Robin for $10 says, does Ryan dogmatically hold to slavery being wrong, or is he open to revision? Is Ryan dogmatic about dogmatism being wrong, or is he open to revision? By the way, this is the book I was talking about. It's all blurred right there, but I like that one. I like this one. I picked another one up by some guy named Michael. It's kind of dog shit, but the rest of them are pretty good. Now here's our next one from Ben Thorpe for $20. Hey, love this channel. Thanks again for having me on. Great debate tonight. Can't wait to do it again. And of course, like Pedro said, you're welcome to come back on, Ben, but don't annoy the shit out of me in my Twitter or I block you, as you might know. I only have so much time. Only so much time. So let's get to a few more of these. Thank you guys so much for sticking around for this. Tim for $10 says, being non-dogmatic and just looking for what works is our uniquely atheistic society's complete moral failure and depravity. Evidence for spiritual faithfulness beginning objectively superior morality. Do you guys want to speak to that? Or no?
Being okay,
yeah. I mean,
yeah, just like that, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. Why even debate if it's all subjective? Why is it of value? Why does pursuit of science matter on the same basis? Word salad seems to be the atheist cope for being dense and avoiding justification. Now, we never really did get, I feel like the question was kind of avoided the entire time. I don't feel like we ever got to kind of the root of this, which is what's being talked about here, which is, you know, where do these value sets come from and why should we value them in the first place? Am I way off base there, guys? Any Bueller? Anyone?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there was real kind of inconsistency. It was wanting to play one side to get out of one issue and then making all these objective claims and then objective value claims. And I mean, that should have been apparent to everybody. I don't
Yeah, I mean, you begin your position with relativism and subjectivism, and then you go on to make a bunch of objective claims. I mean, if people can't see that being inconsistent, then again,
and you ought to believe, and Jay, you started to touch a little bit on this too, but it's always good. The normative claims, you ought to believe this. I think that you ought, I just ought to look at the data and interpret the way that I have this subjective arbitrary standard that I just posited, because it's what I subjectively determine and arbitrarily what works, which can be different from any society. I mean, talk about word salad.
What works to do what? To say something works doesn't even explain to do what.
Yeah, well, it's not a self-evident principle. I mean,
right.
And independent, like you'd said, you determine what works. You determine the ends by which I want it to work this way. And so for another culture or a group of people, they'd be like, well, that's not what works for us, right? So it's missing the kind of whole ends and teleological kind of determinations of that very word. So again, it's just ignoring the problem and just using, the word sounds nice, right?
Jay, you used to be a smoker, right?
I did.
Does it make you want one, the fact that I'm smoking?
Yes.
No, I have zero.
Yes.
Literally, well, I mean, because that literally takes the fun out of it if you don't. Like if I'm making you suffer, just that makes me a little bit happier, But
you got to get your tracheotomy.
No, I haven't had a desire. So I got pneumonia twice, and getting pneumonia twice made me never want to smoke again.
Yeah. And then when I had to give Jay a tracheotomy and put his Stephen Hawking tracheotomy device in, yes, Andrew.
David for $5 says data is just data. You have to interpret the data. The data is not a conclusion. Ben Thorpe for $5 says Dawson, empiricism leads to trust in science, experts, etc. This allows certain groups to be much like church leaders and enforce their own interpretations. That's actually a pretty interesting point, I must say. 1 second here. I got to pull a couple more of these.
This is a point that Foucault made, which is just that, I'm not a postmodernist, but the postmodernists have made this point that the lab coats are the new high priests. So all of the Reddit, Fedora, atheist people, they just follow the mainstream, scientism people, like people were. And that was the point I kept trying to make, was that there's a religious commitment going on here, which is being missed. Critiques of empiricism have pointed out for a long time that it's dogmatic. It's not actually justified. It rests on dogma.
Khan for $10 says Jay addressed a difference between interpretations of objectivity and subjectivity. The main critique atheists are making is that Jay is subjective as well. Could Jay address this and circularity?
So he said at one point, every religion interprets their books different. You're just doing an interpretation. But that has nothing to do with who's right and who's wrong, what's true and what's false, obviously. So the fact that people interpret texts is not we would not conclude from that all texts are relative.
Yes.
I mean, it's an obvious non sequitur. But circularity is depending upon the type of thing that's in question. So if we're asking meta level questions about ultimate authority in a worldview, ultimate reference points, everybody's worldview at some point will be circular. For example, can you use logic? Can you explain logic or meta logic without using logic? No. Can you explain linguistic philosophy without using words? No. So some types of things are going to be inherently circular, and that's different than something being a viciously circular in the sense of a contradiction.
Scooter Downey for $5 says, Ryan, what does what works means? I am sorry that he had to bow out a little early, guys. He said that he was suffering from a migraine. We all know that those absolutely suck. So I still want to read his questions out to be completely fair to the guy. And of course, he's welcome back on the Crucible or a follow-up or, kind of whatever they want. I still thought that it was a good debate, to be perfectly honest with you. I didn't think it, I thought it was very entertaining, and he was a very engaging guy. Jake for $5 says, Ryan, can you elaborate on whether you think math and logic or other universals are discovered or created societal constructs, and how you know this? Well, I mean, that's another question, I guess, that's going out into the void, Jake. I do appreciate you asking it, though. Maybe I should, maybe I'll send these all over to Mr. Dawson, and then he can just write it all out, and I'll read it one day, on stream. What's Ryan's justification for why Zionism is bad? And do you guys have a justification for Zionism being good or bad, or are you indifferent to it? Jay?
You want to ask me questions on YouTube that will get me banned on YouTube?
The thing that it's really weird with Zionism, because on Twitch and on YouTube, progressives are constantly talking about it, especially progressive communists, and they don't seem to get in any trouble. So I don't know if that's
I'm pretty sure you're not a progressive communist on your channel, though. So
well, that's true. That's true. But it's, I think it's because they take that whole Palestinians, maybe that's what it is. Paladin for $10 says, I'm having a difficult time believing that if God called in to debate, that he would say, good job, Jay, you got everything right. There are a lot of logical debaters in hell. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, so that's just an ad hominem emotional argument that has nothing to do with what's true or false.
KG Dorman says for $5, question, use too many characters. How do I call in next time? You can't say ethics are subjective and then say XYZ is wrong, right? Thanks. Yep. So the process for calling in before Jay answers this is we always have a Discord link, and it's always pinned. You can always go into Discord.
I mean, I don't know how simpler it could be to point out that that's a contradiction. I mean, there's nothing to respond to. It's just an obvious contradiction.
Well, there you guys have it. But anyway, yeah, you just go into the Discord, and that's how you call in. That's why we
Andrew, tell them all you have to do is provide your social security number, mother's maiden name, credit card information.
Yeah.
Bitcoin wallet, seed phrases.
Yeah. Yeah. Your parents' maiden name, right? What is mine, no matter what is matter? Never mind for $5 from Pim. I think. Nope. They've got one more from Wicked Wally here. Got to get to it. Got to give Wicked Wally his question. There was another one. Kingdom Kim for $5 says, feel free to call in at the next open debate and Jay's channel. Please enlighten us. I don't know who Kingdom is referencing there, but you do a lot of those open debates. I've noticed that you do a lot more of them on Twitter these days.
Yeah, we do that usually once a week, every 2 weeks. And they usually go for several hours. So yeah, anybody can come on and debate anytime.
And you stream those from your channel, don't you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a really great setup. I've been in a few of those Twitter exchanges. I think that they're a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Father Deacon and Jay, would you agree that pure empirical data is descriptive knowledge instead of prescriptive upon the subjects that we allegedly sense?
Yes and no. In one sense, you're given a description. In another sense, you're given a normative claim that you ought to believe that this is the description. So there are two categories, but they're always inextricably linked to each other, right? The descriptive already presupposes, implies a prescriptive or normative that you ought to believe that this is the correct description.
Jay, will you hold up an out of focus book to the camera? I feel like I just did that, though.
Everybody should read this right now.
Right this second. Do it. Do it. Don't make me have to link that in the chat. Do I have to link everything in the chat? Ben Thorpe says, thanks, Andrew, for saying I could come back on. Tough debate tonight. I just wanted your $10. You're never coming back on. I'm kidding. Kidding. Pano for $5 says, Ryan mentioned brute facts, which would make him stuck in the grammar phase of classical, what is that, pedagogy or pedagogy? So much for modern democracy's many advancements. Okay. Wicked Wally for $5 says Ryan is far sharper when the migraine isn't putting him in dire straits. And with that terrible dad joke, we're getting the hell out of here. Jay Dyer, shout your channel out one more time.
Yeah, it's just Jay Dyer, and then my website's Jay's Analysis, and my books and archive and all that's there. And then I'm a big promoter of Rockfin, so you can find me on Rockfin and all the other social medias.
Get over there. Make sure that you subscribe while Father Deacon Ananias shamelessly shills for these various books, which we obviously appreciate. We need some type of soy jack backliner where they're pointing at something. I know Tristan Haggard's great for that. From all of us here at Crucible Land to all of you at home,
I bet those glasses make you see better.